Chapter 44-24. Soon, the king's warship started moving in the direction they had come from. They had retreated. The stone monster saw it and watched as the king's ship left. It didn't know what to do. Luin saw this as well, and he heaved a sigh of relief. It had been effective. The threat of the stone golem combined with his own attack had threatened a technological civilization. This technological fishing civilization definitely wasn't afraid of Luin. Once they reached the level of a fishing civilization, their methods would definitely not be as simple as attaining the laws of two universes. It was just that the price they had to pay to resist Luin might not be worth it. Luin had never thought of making a fishing civilization fear him. It was fine as long as he retreated. Although they were unable to use technology to deal with the heavenly realm, at least the human civilization would no longer be threatened by technology. If he wanted to complete the mission in the unknown world, he needed a civilization that he could use. As for this technological civilization, he should forget about it. He didn't want to provoke it. Anyway, he didn't plan on completing the mission. The mission reward could no longer help the entire human civilization. It was meaningless. Luin returned to the Tianyuan universe and brought Lu Feiyang over. Keep an eye on that oval-shaped light. If it changes directions, immediately report back to me. Yes. Lu Feiyang was excited. It was everyone's honor to be able to work for the patriarch. Luin didn't have the time to keep an eye on the warship. If he wanted the human civilization to feel at ease, the warship would have to stay away for at least 100 years. Spending 100 years watching the warship was too much of a waste. He still had to enter Xiang City and think of a way to control it. He also had to return to the human civilization from time to time. He could feel the restraints of the Azure Lotus defense. If he could completely control Xiang City, with its defenses, he would be able to do anything he wanted. But if he wanted to take control of Xiang City, besides finding a way, the biggest obstacle was Yuche. Yuche must have a backup plan waiting for him to find a way to take control of Xiang City. So, not only did he have to think of a way to take control of Xiang City, he also had to have the power to deal with Yuche. Fortunately, he had also been cultivating his power of will while he was in Xiang City. As his power of will continued to grow, he knew that he had not wasted any time. The problem was that Xiang City could not be moved. Otherwise, he could have just brought Xiang City back to the three universes. Could this immobility be related to Yuche? Luin arrived outside Xiang City and entered. The rock monster accompanied Lu Feiyang to keep an eye on the technological civilization. There was no one left in Xiang City, but it did not matter. He did not need the rock monster. Several years later, Luin left Xiang City and saw Lu Hui standing in front of him. Lu Hui was overjoyed when she saw Luin and hurriedly reported, "Ancestor, there's been a change in technology." Lu Yin's expression changed, and he immediately went to look for Lu Feiyang. He continued to teleport until he found Lu Feiyang. The Lu family had taught the younger generation that could teleport, and they had trained them to find each other. Naturally, Luin knew how to do it as well. Lu Feiyang heaved a sigh of relief when he saw Luin arrive. "Ancestor, this oval-shaped light suddenly changed directions a year ago. I don't know why." Luin looked at the oval-shaped light in the distance. He didn't head towards the three universes, but rather deviated from the angle he had originally come from. This angle might be very small, but for the distance of a square inch, a casual deviation could allow a bitter calamity expert to walk for a lifetime. He looked in the direction where the technological civilization had originally advanced, using the mirroring technique. The mirroring technique couldn't cover a certain area like an ordinary person could. It could only see a direction, or rather, a point. With such a wide distance, a point couldn't see anything at all. It is very difficult to use mirroring to find things. The greatest use of mirroring is to find things. Knowing the coordinates, or looking into the distance to escape. keep watching. Yes. Lu Yin left, as long as he didn't go in the direction of the three universes. He continued to enter Xiang City. Inside the royal ship, the Highness kept looking at the screen. There was a fish on the screen, an unusually ferocious fish. The reason they had changed directions was because of this fish. In front of the established route, they had detected this fish. Although it looked ferocious on the screen, it was more terrifying in the starry sky. This fish was very large, comparable to a starship, and the strength of its detection was at the eternal level. This forced them to change directions. They didn't want to fight with the eternal level now, and that fish looked particularly ferocious. It could be said to be the most ferocious eternal they had ever seen. The royal ship's detection method was far less effective than Lu Yin's mirroring technique, but it had an area of effect, so it could detect the fish. Another few years passed, and the royal ship sounded an alarm. Warning, warning, unknown life form detected, warning, warning, warning. An object appeared on the screen, moving towards the royal ship at an extremely fast speed. It had just entered the ship's detection range. The Highness said, "Activate absolute analysis." Activate absolute analysis, analysis results, eternal life. Eternal life again. The Highness was stunned. Did they fall into the nest of eternal life? A stone eternal, a human, a fish, and another one here. What was going on? They had been roaming freely for countless years, and they had never encountered so many eternal life forms in such a short time. Turn. Your Highness, do you want to see what eternal life is? No, turn immediately and avoid it. There's a problem here, a problem. We may have entered a strange situation where several forces are fighting. Warning, unknown life form is approaching rapidly. Warning, unknown life form is approaching rapidly. What's going on? It can detect us. The Royal Highness was surprised. Their dazzling light detection method was much larger and farther than the detection range of ordinary eternal life realm. Therefore, when they discovered the fish before, the fish did not discover them at all. However, the stone monster was surprised when it was suddenly discovered. Now, this eternal life form had actually changed direction with them, obviously targeting them. Turn around and avoid it as fast as possible, and bring up the image at the same time. Warning, unknown life form is approaching rapidly. In the king's ship, the alarm kept ringing. The eternal life form was much faster than the king's ship, and it was constantly approaching and accurately finding their position. This made all the technological creatures in the king's ship feel heavy, as if a disaster was imminent. Suddenly, the image of the eternal life form appeared on the screen. This is white, water. It's more like magma. White magma. Your Highness, it will catch up with us in 10 years at most. Wandering, get ready. Once it gets close, launch. Yes. On the other side, Lu Yin came out of Xiang City and saw Lu Hui again. He found Lu Feiyang. Lu Feiyang reported, it changed direction again. This time, I found the reason. Ancestor, please look in that direction, 17 years away. Lu Yin looked and narrowed his eyes. Was that white magma? He stared into the distance. Yes, it was the white magma eternal life form that had killed and devoured one of the eternal life realms in the universe. After they discovered an eternal life realm in the universe, they checked it with karma and found that it was avoiding this white magma creature. Lu Yin also went to look for it because there were 3 pieces of black armor in the hands of another eternal life realm in the universe. After death, they should have fallen into the hands of this white magma creature, but he didn't find them at that time. After all, more than 100 years had passed. He didn't expect to see it here. This place was quite far from where it had killed the eternal life realm in the universe. No wonder it couldn't find it. But judging from Lu Yin's teleportation, this thing had been wandering around. What was this white magma doing? Chasing after a technological civilization? Why? In fact, when it killed the eternal life realm in the universe, Lu Yin and the others found it strange. After all, it was an eternal life form. Wasn't it afraid of karma binding it if it killed another eternal life realm? It wasn't Xianling. Even if the Mud Kingdom could determine karma, it was for self-protection. Killing other eternal life realms would also be bound by karma. But this white magma seemed to be targeting the eternal life realm. Lu Feiyang looked on excitedly. His strength was limited, and he had never seen such an exciting scene. He didn't know what would happen if an eternal life realm chased after a technological civilization. The stone monster couldn't see, and its mission was to protect Lu Feiyang. Seeing Lu Yin's serious expression, it felt uneasy. Was he going to ask it to do something again? Time continued to pass, and the white magma creature got closer and closer to the oval light. No matter how the oval light changed its direction, it was still targeted. When the two of them were very close to each other, wandering was released. Lu Feiyang had never thought that the universe would become like this. It was just like when he was young and hid under the blanket and was pulled out by his mother. The moment the blanket was lifted, the sky was bright. At this moment, the distance of the square inch was lifted, and his understanding was enlightened. So the universe could be like this. Was this the power of eternal life? He had seen eternal life realms fight, but he had never been so shocked. The stone monster was in awe. It was this power again. It was too terrifying. So far, wandering was one of the attacks that had the greatest effect on the distance of the square inch. Even if its power was far inferior to Ancestor Shan's final star Toad Star seizing palm, the impact it caused was unparalleled. The entire universe was pulling, and it was as if it was pulling one's senses. It brought about an unparalleled shock. The white magma was being pulled, and it was caught in Wandering's attack. Its entire body was spread out like a flat plane, pulled in all directions, and space seemed to be completely torn apart. However, no matter how it was torn apart, the white magma was still connected. Lu Yin frowned, as it was ineffective. The pulling and tearing of space was actually ineffective against this white lava. It was still approaching the oval light, and its speed did not slow down at all. Even though its body was being pulled further and further away, it seemed to be endless. From a distance, it looked like a white ribbon floating in the dark depths of space. Under extreme pulling, Wandering could tear apart ordinary eternal life realms, but at this moment, it seemed powerless. Within the oval light, the prince was shocked. How can this be? Your Highness, there are countless species in the distance of the square inch. Some species do not fear wandering, and this is their nature. There is no other way. Release crystal fall. Needles pierced towards the white magma. The white magma was already being pulled by wandering, and its body stretched out. Those needles pierced towards its body. All of them hit the target, and not a single one fell. Chapter 44-25. The white magma's body protruded like a hedgehog, but it couldn't be pierced. The next moment, the needles bounced off and scattered in all directions. Crystal fall, ineffective. Light sprinkled down, reflecting the weapons. Ineffective. The royal ship released all kinds of attacks, some of which weren't even qualified to be used on the battlefield against an eternal, but they were still released. They had no choice but to look for the white magma's weakness. However, the white magma seemed to have no weakness. No matter how they attacked, they couldn't break it, tear it apart, shake it back, or kill it. Lu Yin's eyes narrowed as he recalled the scene he had seen in the devouring universe. Another eternal had been surrounded by the white magma and couldn't escape. In terms of defense, the white magma was much more powerful than it looked, and its speed was also abnormally fast. It was as if it was capturing creatures. What the hell was this? During the chase, a civilization appeared in Lu Yin's field of vision. The oval light directly entered that civilization's universe and then shuttled out, not caring about the damage its attacks would cause to that universe. Suddenly, the white magma disappeared. Lu Yin's eyelids twitched. Impossible. He had been staring at the white magma, and it couldn't have disappeared unless it had teleported. The next moment, the white magma reappeared on the other side of that universe, in front of the oval light. No one had expected it to appear so suddenly, and its speed was no different from teleportation. Lu Yin's eyes flickered as he stared at the scene. How could this be? Only Xianling and the Lu family knew how to teleport. How could the white magma know how to do it as well? But if it wasn't teleportation, how could it explain what had just happened? Lu Feiyang was stunned. Ancestor, this. Lu Yin frowned. The white magma was about to come into contact with him. At the same time, alarms kept ringing in the royal ship. The sudden appearance of the white magma was unexpected. Crystal Fall was released immediately, but other than piercing the white magma into a hedgehog, it had no effect. Finally, the white magma passed through all kinds of attacks and arrived in front of the oval light. It adhered, grew, and devoured it. The light dimmed and was covered by white. The universe seemed to darken. It was over. Lu Feiyang looked into the distance. That technological civilization was finished. He couldn't help but look at Lu Yin. What kind of monster was this white magma? It didn't seem easy to deal with. Could the ancestor deal with it? Although the white lava had withstood Wandering's attacks, it did not mean that it had won. Some creatures were more adept at attacking or defending, such as Harrier. If he remembered correctly, one of the two eternal life realms who had swallowed the universe had escaped. The two eternal life realm experts were the most ordinary eternal life realm experts. If one of them could escape, it meant that the white magma's attack power might not be very strong. The universe dimmed, and the oval-shaped radiance was covered. However, the trajectory didn't change, and it headed straight for the predetermined path. It was just that its speed had decreased. Within the royal ship, an alarm rang out in the ears of all the life forms present. It was the same alarm that had sounded when Lu Yin had used his tricolored divine power transformation. How much longer can our defenses last? That Highness asked. Your Highness, according to this creature's attack power, it should be able to last for a long time. How long exactly? As long as the enemy doesn't increase the intensity of their attacks, it should be enough for us to return to the Empire. That Majesty was astonished. He had already given up all hope. Even though they wouldn't die, the destruction of this ship would be a great loss to the Empire. But no. This white magma wasn't that strong. He had thought that it would be able to withstand Wandering's attacks and destroy the royal ship's defenses, but it seemed that this wasn't the case. Of course, it will take a long time to return to the Empire. This creature is dragging us in a certain direction. If we have enough resources, we can follow the predetermined path. But if we run out of resources, we can only be dragged by this creature. Communicate with it. Yes. A voice came from the royal ship, trying to communicate with the white magma, but it didn't respond at all. That Highness didn't give up either. In their current situation, they could only communicate with it. Otherwise, their resources would be exhausted before they returned to the Empire. Once that happened, they would be finished. Their only thought was to contact the Empire and ask for support. However, the royal ship couldn't move the white magma. Even if the Empire sent reinforcements, it would be useless unless they sent out an imperial ship. The importance of an imperial ship was far greater than that of a royal ship. The Empire would rather give up on a royal ship than take the risk of sending one. The technological civilization tried to communicate with the white magma, and Lu Yin kept an eye on it. After a while, the royal ship slowly moved away from that civilization. Lu Yin took the stone golem and Lu Feiyang and teleported to that civilization to investigate. He wanted to know how the white magma had traveled from one end of the civilization to the other. It wasn't as simple as traveling across an entire civilization. It was still quite a distance away, and it should have traveled several years to reach the eternal realm. It wasn't simple at all. Currently, this civilization was very ordinary, and it hadn't even developed cultivation. The creatures inside were living by instinct. Luin studied it for a while and finally understood. A tributary of the river of time. The white magma's movement path was connected to a tributary of the river of time. It didn't move by mere inches, but rather by this tributary of the universe's river of time. It used the flow of time to instantly travel from one end of the civilization to the other. As long as it was within the range of this tributary, it could move at will. This wasn't the power of time, but rather the power of space. It used space to locate time, which was somewhat similar to Lu Yin's use of space to chase after time. However, one focused more on the movement of space, while the other focused more on the flow of time. After understanding this, Lu Yin heaved a sigh of relief. As long as it wasn't teleportation, it was fine. However, this method of movement was quite impressive. The white unknown could open a portal in the mainstream of the river of time, and this white magma could move along the tributary. Could there be some connection between the two? The white unknown and the white magma, in terms of strength, were obviously impossible, but there was no guarantee that there was some connection between the two. Lu Yin looked into the distance, growing even more curious. Following that, he chased after the technological civilization and the white magma. Their speed became very slow, and both sides were dragging each other back and forth. However, in the end, the technological civilization couldn't outlast the white magma. After all, their resources were limited. Now, it was up to them to see how they could escape from the white magma. Suddenly, the two entangled parties changed directions and headed in another direction, which was the direction the white magma had been dragging them along. Lu Yin was shocked. What did this mean? Giving up so quickly. Did they run out of resources? Since the oval light wasn't dragging them along, the white magma moved at an extremely fast speed in the direction it wanted to go. Ancestor, the technological civilization has lost, Lu Feiyang said. The stone golem couldn't see them at all. They were too far away, and Lu Yin didn't want to be discovered by the white magma. Lu Yin looked at the two entangled parties. Had they lost? Impossible. He hadn't forgotten that the oval light that was one size smaller than this one had been able to shoot out. It had shot out a few batches of drifters. How many times had it shot out? The resources couldn't be gone. If they had been entangled for hundreds or even thousands of years, he could still believe it. But now, it was absolutely impossible. What was this technological civilization trying to do? He continued to chase. Inside the royal ship, the prince stared at the screen. Are you sure? Your Highness, the royal ship's analysis is absolutely certain. The fish's path and speed are in this position. The white monster is moving in a direction that deviates from the fish's direction. This deviation will require us to contribute. The royal ship will analyze it well and will definitely send us in the direction of the fish. Calculate the time of contact. Calculation complete. Alright, I want to see if this white monster or that fish is stronger. Your Highness is wise. Since it's already like this, we'll just die together. Half a year passed quickly, and Lu Feiyang looked into the distance and whispered, Ancestor, this technological civilization won't be dragged away by the white lava, right? Lu Yin clasped his hands behind his back and said, Not necessarily. They definitely have a trick up their sleeve, but I don't know where it is. Continue to keep an eye on them and contact me if anything strange happens. He didn't know how long this situation would last, so it was better to let Lu Feiyang keep an eye on them. He had his own matters to attend to. However, this wasn't Xiang City. It would take some time to enter and leave, and it would be easy to delay things. He had to return to the three universes to oversee things. Luin teleported back to the three universes and continued to build his mental walls. Actually, in Xiang City, using willpower to see everyone could also help him build his mental walls, but the process was slower. Xiang City was only so big, and even if everyone's experiences were different, their knowledge was still limited. It wasn't as vast as the three universes. Furthermore, he still had to deduce the mirroring technique, so he had to enter the mirage domain. Otherwise, it would take too much time. He had thought that he would have to settle down for a long time, but he hadn't expected Lu Feiyang to come looking for him in just over a year. Lu Yin and Lu Feiyang teleported again and again, and they saw the technological civilization's royal ship and the white lava. They also saw an incomparably ferocious fish in the distance. Lu Yin was stunned. Eternal life. Lu Feiyang was a little alarmed. A few months ago, that technological civilization suddenly made a move and changed their direction while trying to drag the white lava. At that time, I felt that something was wrong. Since they had the strength to spare, why did they wait until now to act? That's why I looked in their direction and happened to see that fish. Ancestor, that's eternal life, right? Lu Yin nodded. It is indeed eternal life. Although the fish was huge, it was too small in the face of the square meter. Lu Feiyang and Lu Feiyang had used their mirroring technique to look at it repeatedly, but they still couldn't see it. It could only be said that Lu Feiyang's luck was pretty good, as he had discovered the fish before the two entangled parties had even encountered it. However, it had definitely been discovered by the technological civilization. That, combined with the fact that the technological civilization had changed their direction. So that was how it was. The technological civilization had discovered this fish long ago, which was why they had changed their direction once. If not for that change, they would not have encountered the white lava. Now, they had dragged the white lava over in order to fight that fish. The three were competing to see who would be the last one standing. Well done, Feiyang, Lu Yin praised. Lu Feiyang was excited and encouraged. Thank you for your praise, ancestor. Lu Yin patted him on the shoulder and glanced at the entangled parties before looking at the fish again. It wouldn't be long before the two parties would meet. Interesting. Chapter 44-26. From an outsider's point of view, it was a completely different experience. Would the unknown force also have a hobby of using civilizations to destroy civilizations? Time passed quickly, and the entangled parties were getting closer and closer to the fish. At this moment, within the royal ship, the creatures from the technological civilization were also waiting for this moment. All of a sudden, the royal ship shook. What's going on? Your Highness, the white lava has left the ship. What? In space, the white lava that had been attached to the oval-shaped light suddenly condensed, causing the oval-shaped light to bloom once again. The white lava left the oval-shaped light and headed in a certain direction at an even faster speed. The creatures from the technological civilization had not expected this, and neither had Lu Yin, but he immediately knew the reason. The white lava had set its sights on the fish and had given up on the technological civilization. Your Highness, let's leave quickly. The white lava has given up on us. Immediately turn around and head in the opposite direction. The oval-shaped light was very decisive and headed directly in the opposite direction of the white lava without any intention of stopping. The white lava did not care about the oval-shaped light and continued charging towards the fish. No. Regardless of whether it was the technological civilization or the white lava, their ability to detect their surroundings was very strong. The fish did not even realize that it had been targeted and continued to leisurely wander through space. After some time, it stopped and stared ahead with its ferocious eyes that flickered uncertainly. The fish scales on its body trembled visibly as if it had seen something. Then, it turned around and ran. Lu Yin raised his brows. So decisive. Lu Feiyang was shocked. It ran away. That was too undignified. It was clearly immortal, so how could it not even have the courage to face its enemy? The stone monster did not know what had happened, but from Lu Yin and Lu Feiyang's expressions, it seemed that something unexpected had happened. At this moment, the situation was rather clear. The oval-shaped light was running in one direction while the fish was running in the other. Both sides were running with their backs facing each other while the white lava chased after the fish, completely giving up on the oval-shaped light. Lu Yin looked at the fish. Due to the distance, he could not sense its strength, but the technological civilization should be able to analyze it. The fact that it had not clashed with the fish before meant that it was not simple. He did not expect that it would not even have the courage to attack the white lava and would just run away. As the fish fled, the white lava chased after it, just like how the white lava had chased after the oval-shaped light. However, this process was transferred to the fish. The fish's appearance was domineering and ferocious. At first glance, one could tell that it was not to be trifled with. Who would have thought that it would run away in an abnormally sorry state? Its tail was swinging so hard that it was about to break. A year later, the white lava kept approaching like a ghost. The fish's speed was not as fast as the white lava, and its ability to sense the surroundings was also far inferior. There was no way it could escape. When he saw a cosmic civilization, he knew that he was about to catch up. The white lava disappeared in an instant. The fish looked back. Where was the monster? In front of them, white replaced the starry sky. The fish looked over and was stunned. So fast. The white lava suddenly rushed towards the fish, and both sides were very close. The fish suddenly raised its tail and whipped it from top to bottom. With a bang, the white lava was sent flying. Lu Yin and Lu Feiyang were shocked. They originally thought that the fish was running away frantically because it was too weak and did not dare to face the white lava face to face. They did not expect that it could send the white lava flying with a single swipe of its tail. This strength was much stronger than a technological civilization, so why was it running? The fish turned around and continued to flee frantically. However, the white lava quickly stabilized and chased after him, vanishing in an instant. There were cosmic civilizations in the surroundings that were enveloped by tributaries of the river of time, allowing them to instantly appear in any location. The fish stared blankly at the descending white lava. Teleportation. No way, was there really such an innate gift? It raised its tail and whipped it out again. Lu Yin's eyes narrowed. This fish did not use brute force to whip its tail out, but rather battle techniques. The moment the fish raised its tail, Lu Yin seemed to have seen some sort of charm that perfectly mobilized the fish's life force and eternal matter to form that attack. There was a loud bang. The white lava flew out in response to the sound and was sent flying out again. The fish turned around again. However, the white lava caught up to it again. Lu Yin felt sorry for the fish. It kept changing directions in an attempt to avoid the white lava, but in reality, it was running around the space civilization. If it had chosen a direction to run, the white lava would not have been able to catch up to it so easily. Loud bangs tore through the void. The white lava was sent flying again and again, but it instantly closed in again. Fish. Its eyes were fierce and it let out a warning roar, but it had no effect on the white lava. It seemed to have no intention of communicating with it. It was the same when it fought against the technological civilization. Not far away, the cosmic civilization was swaying due to the shockwaves of the battle between the two eternal realms. Countless lives had been lost. The white lava tried to wrap around the fish again and again, but the fish sent it flying again and again. Now, every time it was sent flying, it would observe and find that the white lava was really unharmed. This made the fish feel a little helpless. It was best to escape. I am Barong. I am kind by nature and do not want to provoke evil. You are not my opponent. Quickly retreat, the fish threatened. The white lava rushed over. Bang! It was sent flying. Why are you attacking me? Aren't you afraid of karma? I have no enmity with you. Is there a misunderstanding? Bang! Don't blame me for being impolite if you continue like this. Just because I don't want to increase the karma doesn't mean that I don't dare to kill you. Lu Yin frowned. The white lava seemed to have no other means. It approached, wrapped around, and that was it. An eternal being could not only have such means. No matter how he looked at it, this thing was very strange. The white lava rushed towards Balrog again. You're courting death. Balrog roared, and his life force surged and swept through the void. He raised his tail high and whipped it even more fiercely this time. The white lava was drawn out of the cosmic civilization's range, which was probably beyond the reach of the tributary of the River of Time. Balrog's eyes swept over the cosmic civilization, and then it suddenly rushed in another direction. Lu Yin raised his brows. It had seen through it. The fish had seen through the movement of the white lava, but so what? It could not escape. The white lava instantly disappeared, and then it appeared as close to Balrog as possible and rushed towards him. Although it could not move through the tributary of the River of Time, the white lava gradually caught up to Balrog and then wrapped around him under the astonished gazes of Lu Yin and the others. This time, Balrog's tail whipped out very weakly, and it was not enough to send the white lava flying. He could only allow the white lava to wrap around him and gradually cover his entire body. Ancestor! Lu Feiyang cried out. Lu Yin stared at this scene, still very calm. No eternal being was simple. Even if he had easily killed an eternal being, it was because he had mastered too many of them. Each of them was enough to become an offensive weapon of the fishing civilization. In fact, looking at the distance of a square inch, the eternal being was not simple. After all, it was too difficult to cultivate to the eternal realm, and only they themselves knew how many life-saving abilities they had mastered during this process. The white lava completely wrapped around Balrog, and he quietly stopped in space, not moving. But in the next moment, the white lava suddenly gave up on Balrog and rushed in another direction. Lu Yin frowned and used his mirroring technique to look in the direction the white lava had rushed out. He thought of something, but he could not see anything wrong. He looked back and used Balrog's speed as a rhythm to look into the distance. He saw a fish scale. It was very inconspicuous, but it had attracted his attention because it had torn through the void and caused a black crack to appear in the void. This black crack was actually not very long, and it could not be seen at first glance. A fish scale. Balrog. He ran away. Lu Yin brought the stone golem and Lu Feiyang to Balrog, who had just been wrapped in the white lava. Balrog was motionless like a statue. Lu Yin waved his hand, and Balrog's body scattered, leaving only the fish scale floating on the planet. Empty. What a strange escape technique. The stone golem was surprised. Lu Yin looked into the distance. Indeed, it was a very strange technique. He had been watching the battle, but he had not noticed it at all. That fish was very good at escaping, but it was not very fast. In the distance, Balrog felt uneasy. That white monster had actually managed to identify him so quickly. That shouldn't have been possible. Breaking off a scale to survive was an innate ability of its species. Unless it had known beforehand, it would not have been able to identify him so quickly. Could it be that this white monster was here to kill him? He did not have any enemies. At this thought, Balrog's body returned to its original form and stopped in place. Only the fish scale flew into the distance. When the white lava found Balrog and attached itself to him, it realized that something was wrong and chased after him again. After a few times, the distance between Ba Rong and the white lava grew larger and larger. The main reason was that Ba Rong's body could delay the white lava for a while each time. Although this delay was not very long, the distance between them was slowly increasing. As long as there was enough time, Ba Rong would be able to escape the white lava's pursuit. Lu Yin looked into the depths of space. It was comfortable to watch others kill each other, but this stalemate was purely a matter of time. Chapter 44-27. The triple firmament sword intent completely pierced through the white magma and turned to stab it again. "Stop, or I'll kill you completely," Lu Yin warned. The white magma didn't care. The pierced area melted and recovered in the blink of an eye. Then, it covered Lu Yin. Lu Yin frowned. Was it really impossible to communicate? He opened his heavenly eye and stared at the white magma. The white magma was still rushing towards him. It wouldn't be fixed and there was no line of sight. Purple eye power was suddenly released, oppressing all living beings. The white magma was suppressed by the eye power and squirmed with difficulty. External pupil avatar. The eye power turned into Mahakala sealing mirror, trapping the white magma inside. The white magma kept colliding, but it couldn't break through the imprisonment of the external pupil avatar. This eye power grew stronger as Lu Yin became stronger, and it was enough to imprison ordinary eternal realm powerhouses. The white magma's defense was powerful, but its attack was ordinary and couldn't break through. In the distance, Lu Feiyang was shocked. The patriarch was too powerful. He had seen with his own eyes that the white magma made technological civilizations helpless and dragged away. He had also seen the mighty strange fish being beaten until its scales were broken. Could both sides be at the eternal realm? The attacks couldn't hurt it at all. But against the patriarch, it was defeated in a few moves. This was the strength of the patriarch, a powerhouse who stood at the peak of humanity. The patriarch was too powerful. Lu Yin watched as the white magma kept colliding with the external pupil avatar. In his hand, a karma spiral appeared and hit the white magma. He wanted to see what the white magma was. At the same time, he asked Lu Feiyang to keep an eye on the fish under the protection of the stone monster. Since it was an eternal life, there was no reason to ignore it. The karma spiral penetrated the white magma, but the white magma didn't dodge. It just blindly hit the external pupil avatar. This was an eternal life that didn't have self-awareness but had the ability to distinguish between actions. Lu Yin watched the white magma's karma past. He saw the universe's starry sky, saw civilizations shuttling through it, saw it quietly stop, and also saw it attack eternal life. In addition to the eternal realm that Lu Yin knew, the white magma had dealt with more than one eternal life. Suddenly, Lu Yin's eyes narrowed. Bone language. He watched the white magma's karma past and saw it attached to an eternal life's body and wrap around it. Then, the eternal life's bones pierced through the skin. This was clearly bone language. How could this thing know bone language? He didn't sense the power of deathly stillness. Lu Yin's breathing quickened as he vaguely guessed at something. He continued reading. Half a year passed in the blink of an eye. During this time, Lu Yin had seen the white magma deal with the eternal life forms twice. The first time was by accident, and the second time was through karma. He had investigated the death of the eternal life form who had devoured the universe. After seeing the process clearly, he understood the significance of the white magma's actions against the eternal life forms. It was capturing the eternal life realm. That's right, it had been captured, just like how Lu Yin had captured a tributary of the river of time. The method was very simple. He wrapped the eternal life realm and used the bone language to bestow life to the skeleton of the eternal life realm, allowing the bone spikes to break out of the skeleton's body. This way, it would not be considered as killing the eternal life realm, but allowing the eternal life realm to exist in another form, avoiding the binding of karma. The skeleton that was bestowed with the bone language would naturally obey the orders of the death universe. This was the meaning of the existence of the white lava. It was increasing the eternal life realm for the dead universe. Lu Yin thought back to all the battles that he had fought with Guyub, to the Crimson Plains, and to the words that those eyes of death had said to him. Enter my death, give me death. Immortal and indestructible, I will exist forever. The death universe could bestow life to the skeletons of living creatures, and those creatures that were composed of flesh and bones had a unique life. In other words, the death universe had transferred this life from flesh and blood to bones. The life was still that life, and it had not died. Even its consciousness and cognition had not changed. It had just changed its way of living. In the most horrifying words, it had changed its clothes. Seeing this fact clearly, Lu Yin's scalp went numb. He should have thought of it earlier. Since the death universe could control the strength of the Crimson Plains, then it was not impossible for the death universe's powerhouses to control the eternal life realm. At this moment, the eternal life realm that had devoured the universe had turned into an eternal life realm skeleton and become a member of the death universe. How many eternal life realm skeletons had the death universe controlled over countless years? Not only that, but this white lava was not a skeleton. In addition to controlling skeletons, the death universe also had this kind of thing. At this moment, Lu Yin felt a chill all over his body. He had thought that he did not know. The Xianling tribe was already a very strong fishing civilization, but now it seemed that the death universe was perhaps it was even more unfathomable. Even if the controlled eternal life realm skeletons were very weak, and losing their flesh and blood was equivalent to losing a lot of power, once their numbers increased, they would be quite terrifying. In particular, the eternal life realm that killed those skeletons would be bound by karma. This was clearly another kind of hooligan method. If the Mudwater Kingdom designated one as a hooligan through karma, the death universe used death itself to become a hooligan. Lu Yin's eyes flickered as he looked at the white lava. It was as if he was looking at an abyss of death approaching. That was why Qing Lianyu had tried his best to lead the death universe away. If he had not done so, there would not have been 3 universes. The more he saw the truth, the more he was in awe of the core space. What else existed in this universe? The karma spiral continued to shoot out as Lu Yin continued to watch the white lava pass by. Since this thing belonged to the death universe, then it should have nothing to do with the white unknown. Many powers eventually led to the same destination through different means. Lu Yin now wanted to see the death universe through the white lava. He was worried that the death universe would sense his karma, but his desire to see it clearly was extremely strong. He longed to see the death universe clearly, as if he wanted to see everything in the abyss. The passage of time was not enough to keep him in mind, and another year passed in the blink of an eye. Lu Feiyang and the stone golem stared at Ba Rong, but Ba Rong could not sense them. They were too far apart, and Ba Rong could not have gone far in such a short time. As for the technological civilizations, there was no need to worry about them. After this battle, they would not dare to come again so easily. The next time they came, the 3 universes would be able to see the distance between them and the eternal life realm within a few hundred years. Lu Yin's expression was solemn as he looked at the white lava. The past karma allowed him to see the same kind of white lava. It came from a huge white lava. He looked at it again and analyzed it. When he saw a familiar figure, he knew what this white lava was. The Rho universe. That's right, this white lava was the Rho universe. Red Hero had given him the coordinates to find Damao, and one of the coordinates he had found was the Rho universe. This was one of the methods Red Hero had used to deal with him. When he had first arrived at the Rho universe, he had found that there was nothing there. It had been rebooted, but the power of death still remained. At the time, he had guessed that the Rho universe was related to the death universe. Later on, he had learned that the Rho universe was Red Hero's mission. However, the creature in the Rho universe had disappeared, and Red Hero's mission had not been completed. This meant that the creature was still alive. Now, Luin could see that this white lava, or more accurately, the largest white lava that had split the white lava, was the Rho universe. It was no wonder that Red Hero wanted to use the Rho universe to deal with teleportation. This white lava did not have any abilities, but it could still deal with ordinary eternal life realms. One could imagine how powerful the largest white lava was. It was a real creature, and in Red Hero's words, it was a creature that was close to a fishing civilization. Thinking about it, a powerful creature that could continuously split into eternal life realms would eventually split into many more. But why did this Rho universe join the Death universe? Or had this Rho universe belonged to the Death universe from the very beginning? If it was the latter, then it would be interesting. The unknown had given Red Hero the mission to kill the Rho universe, which was equivalent to Red Hero facing off against the Death universe. What did this mean? Was this a borrowed knife? Lu Yin's mind raced as he considered every possibility. At the same time, he continued to examine the Rho universe's karmic past. Was this just one of the Rho universe's splits? Lu Yin did not know if he could find the Rho universe's main body through it. It would be great if he could. The karmic past continued to appear, and suddenly, a huge castle appeared in the past. It was filled with darkness, and the entire world seemed to shake and tremble. What was this place? A battlefield. Suddenly, a pair of eyes appeared in the karmic past. They were the eyes of a skeleton wearing sunglasses that were wrapped in colorful strings. They looked at Lu Yin through the karmic past. Violent music boomed in Lu Yin's ears and reached every cell in his body. At that moment, Lu Yin felt as if his entire body was being torn apart. This was karmic backlash, and he had experienced it more than once. He had used karmic power to spy on the white lava, but he had been discovered. If it had been in the past, he would have been severely injured by this backlash. But now, things were different. He stared at the pair of eyes in the karmic past and the ridiculous sunglasses. If this skeleton wanted to use karmic power to injure him, then it would have to depend on whether or not it had the ability to do so. It was clearly a skeleton, but it was wearing sunglasses and a bright green hat. There were strange patterns drawn on the skeleton's bones, and they swayed rhythmically as if they were provoking Lu Yin. It seemed like an eternity, but it only lasted for an instant. In the next moment, the karmic past disappeared. Lu Yin looked at the white lava, and the skeleton from before was incomparably clear in his mind. It could bring about a karmic backlash. Chapter 44:28. It was a pity that he couldn't use the white lava to increase his karma, but it didn't matter. This thing wasn't Soft's main body, so it couldn't increase his karma by much. Once the white lava wrapped around a creature, it would release the bone whispers of deathly silence in its body, granting life to the creature's skeleton. Thus, there was a lot of deathly silence in its body. The musical skeleton could kill the white lava, but it couldn't erase the power of deathly silence. It didn't care about the power of deathly silence at all. It probably thought that no creature other than its dead universe could use this power. It might even want to use this power to injure itself, but it didn't know that Lu Yin had the power of deathly silence. He released the starry sky in his heart, causing the deathly silent star to rotate and approach the dark abyss. The power of deathly silence continued to spread towards the deathly silent star, expanding it. Lu Yin looked at the deathly silent abyss and felt that it was like a pair of eyes. It wasn't the musical skeleton, but the dead universe. There were too many dangers and too many unknowns in this space. He had broken through many obstacles and thought that he was temporarily stable, but a strong enemy was actually right next to him. It was still not enough. The strength of humans and his strength were far from enough. A long-lost thought appeared in his mind once again. He had once had such thoughts, but he had scruples when facing a strong opponent. Now, he was qualified to do so. The white lava was dead, and the 3 pieces of armor were either with the musical skeleton or its main body. It wouldn't be easy to take them. Lu Yin recalled his external avatar and teleported away. When he reappeared, he was next to Lu Feiyang and the stone golem. Ancestor. Lu Feiyang looked at Lu Yin with extreme respect. He had only heard of the ancestor's power, but he wasn't qualified to get close to the ancestor's attacks that affected the universe. Now, he finally saw it. This was the ancestor's strength, and he could even crush an eternal realm. How is it? Is there anything wrong with this fish? No, it's been fleeing in one direction. Then it's abnormal. Lu Feiyang was puzzled. Lu Yin slowly said, if it's fleeing in one direction, it's either panicking and neglecting to avoid being tracked, or there's something in that direction that can make it feel at ease. Ba Rong didn't use all of his methods. The first is impossible, so there's only the second. Lu Feiyang understood. Thank you for your advice. Lu Yin looked at Ba Rong. After dealing with the white lava, it was next. He teleported and disappeared. Lu Feiyang looked into the distance. This fish was unlucky. In the starry skies, Ba Rong continued to charge into the distance. He would look back from time to time. It was great that it hadn't caught up, but he couldn't be careless. That thing wasn't that easy to shake off. It had been 600 years, 600 years. It had finally escaped from that damned place and confirmed the direction to return, but it had encountered this unlucky thing along the way. Good grandpa, you must protect good grandson. Good grandson had not offended anyone. Apart from looking a little fierce, he was actually kind and liked to help weak civilizations when he had nothing to do. Occasionally, he would point out a bright path to the immortal realm. Good grandson really did not do anything bad. That damned place had made good grandson suffer so much, and he could not suffer anymore. Otherwise, would there be any justice in this space? Looking back again, he didn't chase after them. Looking back again, he didn't chase after them. It stared at the little thing that suddenly appeared in front of it. Its pupils flickered twice, and then suddenly contracted. It let out a frightened scream, human. Lu Yin raised his brows and looked at Ba Rong. Hello, Ba Rong. Tyrannical Rong. He turned over and tried to get further away, as if he had seen a ghost. Lu Yin did not chase after him and simply looked at him. This fish actually knew about humans, which was unusual. He had only wanted to use this fish to increase his karma and see if there was any valuable information about its past, but he had not expected this fish to give him such a pleasant surprise as soon as they met. It was really interesting that it could recognize humans. Regardless of whether it was friend or foe, it was valuable. Ba Rong continued to roll, trying to get away from Lu Yin as much as possible. Its gaze was fixed on Lu Yin, and it was filled with fear, apprehension, and all sorts of other complex emotions. These emotions made Lu Yin particularly curious. Just what had it encountered? All right, you can't run away. Let's talk, Lu Yin said calmly. Ba Rong pulled away and stared at Lu Yin while panting heavily. It seemed to be in disbelief and blinked fiercely, but when it looked back again, it was still that human. The sky had fallen. Human, you won't let me go. Lu Yin smiled. Of course, how could I let you go? Ba Rong snarled and raised its tail threateningly. I won't be caught by you this time. I won't go to that damned place again. Try. Lu Yin raised an eyebrow. Ba Rong stared at Lu Yin for a while and suddenly felt something was wrong. Wait, aren't you an eternal realm cultivator? Lu Yin said, yes or no, do you think you can run away? Ba Rong looked at Lu Yin, so you are not him. Lu Yin's eyes flashed. Wrong, I am him. He is an eternal realm cultivator. My cultivation has increased, you can't see through it anymore. Ba Rong's pupils flickered as it stared at Lu Yin. Impossible, cultivation. You are wrong, you are him, you are him. This is not something you should say. Tell me, what is his name? Lu Yin was amused. This fish wasn't stupid after all. He had only said it casually and didn't expect to get anything out of it with just a few words. This fish seemed bold and stupid, but it was actually quite cautious. All right, he asked me to come. I'm not him. What is his name? Ba Rong raised its tail higher and stared at Lu Yin vigilantly. Lu Yin's eyes turned cold. Tianqi soared. It was indeed him. He was the one who had asked this human to catch him. Run, run quickly. God grandfather, your good grandson has suffered retribution. There is no justice in the square-inch space. Where can you reason with him? Lu Yin looked at Ba Rong's fleeing figure. Did he guess right? It was really him. Ba Rong recognized him as a human and said that it would not be caught and would not go to that damned place. This reminded Lu Yin of something. The first time Ba Yu entered Xiang City, she turned into a vine. After the fire, a puppy saved her and learned the way to leave Xiang City from Ba Yu. The puppy left. Lu Yin arrived at Xiang City and learned about this, so he looked around. If it was a creature below eternal realm, he could see it at a glance and could not run far. But if it was an eternal realm cultivator, although they could not run out of the range of the mirroring technique, who knew where they ran to? Even if they ran for a short time, it was difficult to find them, not to mention that eternal realm cultivators had their own way of hiding. Lu Yin did not find any creature that escaped from Xiang City. Either the puppy did not escape, or the eternal realm cultivator ran away. It was most likely that the eternal realm cultivator had run away. Ba Rong's words reminded Lu Yin of the puppy, so he tested it with the celestial sword. Sure enough, it knew about the sword, which meant that it knew about Yu Che. It should be the puppy that ran away. It had been 600 years. Lu Yin had always remembered this, but he did not expect it. He had inadvertently discovered it. This place was more than 600 years away from Xiang City at the speed of an ordinary eternal realm cultivator, but this fish was very fast. Although it could not compare to the white lava, it was still faster than an ordinary eternal realm cultivator, so it was not surprising that it could reach this place. Guesses were guesses, and the specifics needed to be confirmed by karma. Lu Yin teleported in front of Ba Rong, who did not say anything and lashed out with its tail. In the distance, Lu Feiyang's eyes widened. This strange fish's tail was not weak. Although it could not defeat the white lava, it could still send it flying every time. The powerful tail lashed out at Lu Yin, but it only brushed past his body and missed. Lu Yin approached Ba Rong and kicked out. With a bang, a huge force sent Ba Rong flying and crashing into the distance. Ba Rong was stunned. What was going on? It was clearly a tiny thing, so how could it have been kicked away? Lu Yin teleported in front of it and stomped down. Ba Rong roared. It would rather die than go back to that damned place. It lashed out with its tail again, but it missed again. Bang! Lu Yin stomped down and sent Ba Rong crashing down. Lu Yin then teleported again and again to beat Ba Rong up. This fellow would not be obedient until he beat it into submission. It had nothing to do with grudges, he just needed an environment where Ba Rong could talk honestly. Ba Rong roared angrily. Its head was bruised and swollen, and its eyelids drooped. One of its teeth had been kicked out, and it was in great pain. In the distance, Lu Feiyang could not bear to watch any longer. The ancestor was too ruthless. These injuries were not serious, but they hurt Ba Rong's pride. The stone golem had seen it as well, so there was no need to hide. Lu Feiyang also wanted the stone golem to see what would happen to that fish. As a result, the stone golem spoke to Lu Feiyang in a much gentler tone. Bang! 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 Human, don't force me. I won't go back even if I die. Human, you can't imagine how strong I am. That human didn't come, so you can't stop me. Human, you underestimated me. Human, I was wrong. Luin stopped and looked at the miserable Barong in front of him. That's the attitude to talk. Barong was aggrieved. As an eternal realm, it had been beaten so badly. Its vitality had been shattered, and it couldn't even use its eternal substance. It hurt, its whole body hurt. Why was this human even more ferocious than the previous one? Human, let's make a deal. Can you not go back? Barong tried to curry favor with its bloodshot eyelids. Luin smiled. Okay. Really? Don't move. Just let me take a look. Look at what? How? Karma spiraled around Lu Yin's fingertips, and then he hit Barong. Barong was startled and hurriedly dodged. Karma. Luin said, just look. No. Barong refused. Human, you don't respect me. Being checked by karma meant that there were no secrets left. No one wanted to be checked by karma. This was also the reason why Luin had beaten it up. How could he let it see karma if it didn't submit? Barong was different from white lava. White lava couldn't escape the range of the external vision incarnation, so it could be seen by force. However, Barong could break its scales to survive. Karma might not be able to find a small fish scale accurately. Even if it was trapped in the external vision incarnation, it would take time to check its karma. Besides, it might not be able to trap it. Of course, Crowbind could freeze it, but Luin also wanted to see what other abilities Barong had. Chapter 44-29. Are you rejecting me? Luin threatened, his tone turning cold. Barong stared at Luin. How do you know about karma? This human was even more troublesome and hateful. Barong had been glad that it wasn't that human chasing after him, but now he would rather be caught by that human and thrown into that damned place than be seen through by karma. No eternal realm cultivator would be willing to be seen through by karma. Barong's tone softened. Human, I'm an eternal. You shouldn't use karma to spy on me. Luin agreed. You shouldn't. Barong sighed in relief. But I can. Barong was furious. Human, I'll go back with you to that damned place. Do you still want to become a puppy? Luin asked. Barong was helpless. I have no choice. Are you willing to let me go? It was confirmed that it was indeed that puppy. This guy was really unlucky. He had escaped from Xiang City with great difficulty, but Luin had bumped into him again. I can let you go, but don't move. You can't spy on me with karma. Seems like you're not being honest. Then, he teleported away. Barong's eyes were ferocious. He was going all out. His body remained motionless as fish scales scattered around him. Luin appeared, and the triple firmament sword will slashed out in all directions. Every single scale was struck, and one of them was Tyrant Rong. The Tyrant Rong was knocked out. Seeing the three blue sword intents slashing at it, it raised its tail and smashed the three blue sword intents. At the same time, a ripple appeared under its body. It was like a white wave flowing in the dark depths of the starry sky, and the Tyrant Rong crazily swam into the distance. This scene was extremely ridiculous. But when Luin couldn't get close to Barong, this absurdity turned into shock. How could it prevent him from teleporting closer? Ripples appeared in the starry sky. From afar, the entire universe looked like a black ocean, and the ripples were the waves. Only a fish swam above the waves, and Luin was below the waves. He teleported again, but he could only reach the bottom of the waves at most. He couldn't cross the waves to touch Barong. This was an invisible world created by Ba Rong in accordance with the laws of the universe. Lu Yin watched Ba Rong frantically swim away with the help of the ripples above his head. This fish's power seemed to be born to escape, even the world created in accordance with the laws of the universe. But it had to be said that it was effective. The waves looked like they were inches apart, but in fact, they were separated by inches. That was why they were able to block teleportation. The only way to get close to tyrannical fusion was to break through the waves and rush into its world. Ba Rong didn't even look back as he charged into the distance. Beneath him, the waves stretched out endlessly as if they were splitting the universe apart. He raised his hand and slowly touched the waves. They seemed to be on the same side of the universe, but in reality, they were in another world. This was the dividing line between worlds. Then, he slowly retracted his arm. Ba Rong saw this, but he didn't think that Lu Yin would give up. Instead, he felt an indescribable sense of unease. This human couldn't possibly be able to break through his ripples, right? This was his trump card. Right, that Yu Che had also broken through his ripples. Just as he thought of this, he clenched his hand into a fist and punched out. Starry fist, Big Dipper fist intent. The starry sky swirled as the Big Dipper fist shone brilliantly. It transformed into a fist that fiercely smashed into the ripples, causing them to shatter. The void rumbled as layer after layer shattered. At this moment, it was obvious that the gap between the core sphere and the world of worlds had been broken. Lu Yin took a step forward and appeared above Ba Rong's head. The Gullion appeared in his hand and fell down. Stop! Ba Rong shouted. The Gullion's tip landed on top of Ba Rong's head and stopped. Vitality continuously flowed into Ba Rong's body, causing it to swell like a balloon. He hurriedly said, "Is this vitality?" "Stop, human, let's talk things over, let's talk things over." Lu Yin coldly said, "Keep running, and it won't be that simple." He then put away the Gullion and looked down from above. Ba Rong sighed deeply, "Why am I always the unlucky one? Human, what are you trying to do?" Lu Yin didn't speak. Karma spiraled around his fingertips and he attacked Ba Rong. Ba Rong wanted to dodge, but he didn't dare. His methods were meaningless against Lu Yin, his life was in the other's hands, and he had no right to bargain. Next, Lu Yin began to look through Ba Rong's karma. Looking through karma was a time-consuming process, so Lu Yin simply brought Ba Rong to the Mirage domain to look through his karma. Lu Feiyang and the stone golem also returned. When they arrived at the Mirage domain, Ba Rong's heart sank. Teleportation. Damn it, this was teleportation. There were actually creatures that could teleport. When he had fought with white lava, he had initially thought that white lava had used the tributary of the river of time to teleport, but he had quickly discovered the truth and relaxed. Teleportation was just a legend, but how long had it been? Teleportation had really appeared. How could something like this happen? He stared blankly at Lu Yin as karma continued to flow through his body. There were no more secrets. Lu Yin quietly looked at Ba Rong's karma. Time continued to pass, but fortunately, this was the Mirage domain. He saw Ba Rong's past in Xiang City, how he had interacted with Ba Yu's vines, and how he had been captured by Yu Che. These memories were too deeply etched in his mind. Yu Che hadn't used much force against him, and he had only used the heaven-forged sword to bring him to the brink of death. Then, he had politely invited him into Xiang City. He hadn't just captured him, it had been half an invitation and half a capture. Thus, Ba Rong had spoken with Yu Che and knew about the heaven-forged sword, as well as Yu Che's name. In Xiang City, Ba Rong had turned into a puppy and spent most of his time hiding under a bridge. As a puppy, he was afraid of being killed by humans, especially when he heard that someone liked to eat dog meat. He was so scared that he would tremble and hide under the bridge all year round. Aside from this, Lu Yin also saw Ba Rong's past cultivation. He saw some things that Ba Rong had encountered, some civilizations, and some unfamiliar eternal realms. These were all very normal. Ba Rong had lived for so long, and his experiences were abundant. Lu Yin watched quietly, and after an unknown amount of time, he frowned and stared at the karma. I see that you often talk to the bottom of the water. What's down there? Ba Rong's eyes turned, and he was about to speak. Lu Yin's gaze was cold. I'll use karma to verify it. If it's wrong, I'll tear apart your bones and boil them into soup. Ba Rong trembled, and his eyes dimmed. He said weakly, That's my god-grandfather. Lu Yin. I lived in an ocean that floated an inch apart. That ocean was very, very large, larger than any space civilization I've ever seen. There were all kinds of powerful creatures in that ocean, and I was destined to be food for my natural enemies. Fortunately, I fell to the bottom of the sea. At that time, I was very small, and I drilled into a shell and rolled towards the cracks in the sea. After a long time, a voice called out to me. At first, I thought that it was calling out to me, but later I learned that it was snoring. Ba Rong recalled and looked at the river of time. He wasn't surprised. I was very afraid of the dark bottom of the sea, but the snoring gave me an inexplicable sense of security. I lived there, and there were seaweed and all kinds of underwater plants. It was enough for me to survive and instinctively cultivate. I don't know how long it took, but the snoring stopped. I was scared, but soon after, a gentle voice taught me to cultivate. I don't know what I was cultivating, but I just cultivated like that. As time passed, I reached a bottleneck. That voice told me to find a rebooted universe or to see my own heart clearly. There was an eternal life realm above my realm. I had already left the bottom of the sea and knew that in the ocean, eternal life realm experts were overlords and were extremely rare. I also wanted to break through to the eternal life realm, so I left the bottom of the sea and the ocean and went to the stars. During the years of cultivation at the bottom of the sea, I always called that voice my god-grandfather. Lu Yin retracted his gaze. Ba Rong wasn't lying, and most of his karmic cultivation had been at the bottom of the sea. You haven't seen that underwater creature? Ba Rong said, No. Later, I broke through to the eternal life realm and returned to the sea. I also wanted to meet my god-grandfather, but I still couldn't. He didn't want to see me and only told me to be careful of the inch apart. He said that eternal life wasn't invincible. Too many eternal life realm experts had died, and only by being cautious could one survive. So I created the power to survive. What was your god-grandfather's cultivation? Lu Yin was curious. Ba Rong didn't know either. He didn't say, but he was at least eternal life. Lu Yin exhaled. The inch apart was vast, and he didn't know how many eternal life realm experts there were. Perhaps it was an existence that fit the laws of two universes, or even stronger. This had nothing to do with him, and he was just curious. Next, it was the general appointment platform's turn. Looking at the slowly rotating general appointment platform, Ba Rong felt uneasy. Human powerhouse, what are you doing? Go in and take a look. I didn't resist. Lu Yin smiled. I won't kill you. Don't worry, you have no enmity with my human civilization. I even have a grudge with Yu Che, who captured you. No matter how you look at it, you can be considered half an ally. Ba Rong was surprised. You have a grudge with Yu Che? Lu Yin nodded. Go in. Wait, human, I'll tell you something. How about you let me go? Ba Rong asked. Lu Yin was surprised. Valuable. It was impossible to see the entire karmic past, otherwise, the entire experience of an eternal life realm expert would be enough for Lu Yin to see for countless years. What he could see was only a rough idea. It's about Yu Che and his master. Ba Rong said. Lu Yin's eyes narrowed. Speak. This Ba Rong actually knew about Yu Wu, so it was obviously true. Ba Rong said, I can, but you let me go. Lu Yin looked at him coldly. Ba Rong didn't dare look at Lu Yin and whispered, Human, although the weak are prey to the strong in this inch of space, and you don't need a reason to kill me, I can provide you with information in exchange for my life. It's very reasonable. Lu Yin looked deeply at Ba Rong. All right, speak, and I'll let you go. And that thing, I won't go in. Don't tell me you'll let me go after I go in. Ba Rong was vigilant. Lu Yin nodded. All right. There's more. You're testing my patience. Go Lian appeared in Lu Yin's hand and pointed at Ba Rong. His monstrous killing intent caused space to tremble. Ba Rong was startled and hurriedly said, I'll speak, immediately. Only then did Lu Yin retract his killing intent. Chapter 44:30. Ba Rong felt a lingering fear as it sensed Lu Yin's terrifying strength. This human had not even used his full strength when fighting it, so he was definitely an existence that conformed to the laws of two universes. Even so, it should have been able to sense that this person was an eternal realm cultivator. Could it be that he was even stronger? Ba Rong felt helpless as it thought about this. It had been fine in the core space for so many years, but it had been unlucky ever since it encountered this human civilization. It had to be more careful in the future. I turned into a puppy in that damned place and hid under the bridge. One day, I heard a conversation. The voice was very familiar. It was the human who captured me. I didn't dare to move and just listened quietly. I heard the conversation between him and his master. Speaking of which, his master is really pitiful. Ba Rong looked at Lu Yin and slowly spoke. It was a conversation that had left a deep impression on it. Master, why are you so stubborn? Bastard, what happened to ninth base? I've already told you many times that ninth base has been defeated, and the human inheritance is gone. I don't believe it. Ninth base has been glorious to the extreme. How could it have been defeated? Just the fifth stronghold alone is not something that those civilizations can resist. Master, when will you be willing to accept reality? Master, you can go out at any time. Do you really not want to see the outside world with your own eyes? Don't you want to look for Xiang Shui? It's useless to be stubborn. Master, you haven't gone out for so many years, so you must be certain that ninth base is finished, right? You just don't want to face it, but you have to face it eventually. I have feelings for the fifth stronghold, and Xiang Shui has been good to me. So, if Master is willing to help me take control of Xiang City, I will protect this part of human civilization and at least ensure that it does not end. Master, it seems like Xiang Shui is more important than the entire human civilization in your eyes. Master, if you don't want to talk to me, then I'll tell you. I'm going to give Xiang City away to a little guy with a human inheritance. That little guy has shown me the hope of taking control of Xiang City. But do you know? If he takes control of Xiang City, I can take it for myself. No one can tell him the truth. Master, are you willing to tell him? Bastard, you won't succeed. Yes, it won't be easy, but I'll definitely succeed. You know me. Or rather, you can try to stop that little guy and stop him from taking control of Xiang City. Let's see if he'll listen to you. Xiang City belongs to human civilization and belongs to the fifth stronghold. Yes, so what should you tell him? Was it the true owner of Xiang City, or was it not to let Xiang City return to its original owner? What do you want to do? I will definitely kill you, you bastard. How interesting. I've already surpassed my master, haven't I? Don't be angry, I believe that the little guy has a way to get you out of here. Or rather, you will meet him. I'm looking forward to what you will say when you meet him. Stop him. Help him. Why don't we make a bet? When you meet him one day, try your best to say something unfavorable to me. Let's see how many sentences you'll say to touch my bottom line. This bottom line will become the opportunity for me to kill that little fellow. Then, does this count as you killing that little fellow with your own hands? I will definitely kill you, definitely. I look forward to that day. Well then, master, I'll take my leave first. The next time we meet should be outside the city. After Ba Rong finished speaking, she looked at Lu Yin in silence. This paragraph. She did not understand what it meant. She only knew that Yu Che's words were filled with murderous intent and a bone-chilling coldness. Lu Yin looked at the starry sky with a calm expression, but his murderous intent towards Yu Che was overwhelming. It was no wonder that Senior Yu Wu was unable to say anything after coming out. When Yu Che appeared, Yu Wu had even fought with his life on the line. At that time, Lu Yin had actually hoped that Yu Wu would survive so that he could tell him more about the situation in the fifth stronghold. However, Yu Wu had still sacrificed himself, and the sacrifice was not worth it. So that was how it was. Yu Wu wanted to tell him more, but Yu didn't dare to. Yu Wu had been walking on the edge of a cliff, and in Yu Wu's opinion, it had also brought Lu Yin to the edge of the cliff. Yu Wu's words could very well lead to Lu Yin's death, and Yu Wu could not bear such a loss. Yu Che had completely controlled Yu Che's thoughts, and that fear of him made it unable to trust anyone. No matter how strong the human civilization was, Yu Wu did not think that they could stop Yu Che's murderous intent. Therefore, Yu Wu was begging for death. He wanted to use his death to tell Yu Che that he could not say anything and that the human civilization would not get anything out of him. This way, Yu Che could rest assured that he would not kill Lu Yin. The more stunning Lu Yin's performance was, the more Yu Wu cared about his survival. Perhaps from the first time Lu Yin had spoken to Yu Wu and Yu Wu had said, "Very good," Yu Wu knew that he had to use his death to protect this young man. From the very beginning, Yu Che had been using Lu Yin's life to threaten Yu Wu. However, Lu Yin did not know about this. Only Yu Wu and Yu Wu knew about this. Right, there was also that fish. Yu Wu did not know that Lu Yin was protected by some unknown rule and that Yu Che could not do anything to him. Yu Wu had been fooled. Yu Wu had killed him with just a few words, and he could not even stop Lu Yin from taking control of Xiang City. This was because Xiang City belonged to the humans, and Yu Wu had hoped that Lu Yin could take control of it, even though he knew that Yu Che had a backup plan waiting for him. Words could really kill. Even if it was an eternal realm. Lu Yin could fully understand Yu Wu's grievance, anger, helplessness, and despair. He slowly clenched his fists. Yu Wu's death did not seem worth it, but Yu Wu was worthy of everyone's respect. Yu Wu truly did not fear death, and he was willing to sacrifice himself to protect his beliefs. Yu Che had completed his plan, and Yu Wu's appearance had long been part of his plan. He could not control Xiang City, but he knew that Yu Wu might know something. That was why he had tried to persuade Yu Wu for so many years, but Yu Wu had not said a word. Thus, Yu Che had given Xiang City to Lu Yin and used Lu Yin to force Yu Wu to reveal the secret to controlling Xiang City. Once Lu Yin succeeded, Yu Che would then seize control of the city. When Yu Che had given Xiang City to Lu Yin, he had not held out any hope that Lu Yin would be able to control it. What he had truly hoped for was what Yu Wu had said to Lu Yin after he had been released. It could be said that Yu Che had calculated every step. It was very easy for someone to scheme against someone else. Lu Yin's gaze darkened. All of this had been planned because of Yu Che's absolute confidence in himself. If Yu Che did not have the confidence to take control of Xiang City from Lu Yin's hands, he would not have released Yu Wu, and Xiang City would not have been handed over to Lu Yin. What kind of backup plan did Yu Che have? Lu Yin still could not see through his enemies. They were too weak. In the end, they were still too weak. He needed to take an unconventional approach. His previous thoughts surfaced once again, and it seemed that he really had to do it. The invisible and unknowable had been watching the three universes and cutting off the upper limits of human civilization. The death universe was right next to them, and the unknowable controlled everything. Yuche was closing in on them step by step, and there was also Scarlet Hero, Xianling, and so on. If this continued, Lu Yin knew that he had already reached his limit. He might not even be able to kill his way out of this encirclement. If he wanted to recreate the glory of the Nine Bases era, then he would have to walk a different path from his predecessors. No one in this era could help him, so he could only walk down this path on his own. It was already hard enough, but he was not afraid of more. He longed to sweep through all of his enemies. "Can I leave now?" Ba Rong asked in a gentle tone that seemed to be trying to curry favor. Lu Yin retracted his gaze and looked at Ba Rong. He muttered to himself for a moment before smiling. "Thank you for telling me this." Ba Rong's heart trembled. "Thank you. Was there such a thing as a square inch of space?" Wait, Yuche had said the same thing before. His original words had been, "Thank you. Please help me control Xiang City." "Don't thank me. Can I leave now?" Ba Rong was apprehensive. Lu Yin sighed. "Of course. But..." Ba Rong's heart skipped a beat. Lu Yin looked at Ba Rong apologetically. He approached Ba Rong and raised his hand. Ba Rong instinctively retreated, but then it stopped moving. It seemed that it could not retreat. Lu Yin placed his hand on Ba Rong's head. "A square inch of space is very dangerous, isn't it?" Ba Rong did not know how to answer. Dangerous? Not dangerous. Ba Rong felt as if fate had given it two paths. "I promised to let you go, so I will." "Don't worry, I'm a man of my word," Lu Yin said. He then patted Ba Rong's head. "It's just a little later." Ba Rong's heart sank. "Later? A little later?" "Yes, a little later." "A little later? How long is that?" 100,000 years. Ba Rong's eyes widened. "A little later." Lu Yin was puzzled. "For an eternal realm, isn't that a little later?" "I remember that when I first stepped onto the path of cultivation, an enemy gave me 100,000 years to consider a choice. That enemy was far from the eternal realm." Ba Rong stared at Lu Yin in a daze and recalled their previous conversation. At that time, it wondered if it would be delayed and let go, but it had already asked 2 questions. It was frightened by this human's killing intent and forgot to ask. Now, it did not know what to say anymore. Lu Yin laughed. "Okay, it's only 100,000 years. It will pass quickly. Some eternal beings have been in seclusion for more than 100,000 years. Don't worry, it will be over soon." "Then why did you keep me here?" "Our human civilization lacks eternal beings. You can temporarily fill in." "War. Our human civilization loves peace. How can we go to war?" Ba Rong felt that there was something wrong with what this person said, but it could not help it. It could not run away now. The only advantage of saying those words was that it did not need to enter the general platform hell. Lu Yin had promised it, so he would not throw it in again. He also promised to let it go, but he did not say when. "Let's go. I'll introduce you to other eternal beings." Lu Yin took Ba Rong and teleported to the stone monster and Lu Feiyang. After a brief introduction, he took them back to the 3 universes. The stone monster looked at the starry sky speechlessly. 100,000 years. It also had to stay in the human civilization for 100,000 years. It was not clear whether it was a long time or not. Lu Yin had promised to let it go. He looked at Ba Rong and saw the helplessness in each other's eyes. Lu Yin forced the stone monster and Ba Rong to stay because there were too few eternal beings in the human civilization. Xiang City needed to be protected, and the rock monster was the most suitable. Ba Rong would replace Sky bearing eternal life and stay in the human civilization. Once the human civilization was in danger, it would be able to help a little as long as its life was not threatened, just like Sky bearing eternal life. Chapter 44:31. Of course, it was not good to have too many of these eternal realm creatures. One or two were the most suitable. With Lu Yin around, Ba Rong and the stone monster could only stay where he designated. They could not escape, especially when they saw Shuata Shangyu, Jingmen Shangyu, Mr. Mu, and the other eternal realms. Their desire to escape disappeared instantly. 1, 2, 5, 8, what the hell? Why were there so many eternal beings? Besides Lu Yin, there were 8 more eternal realms. This must be a fishing civilization. Teleportation, 8 eternal realms, and a rogue who was far more powerful than an ordinary eternal realm that could kill at will. If this was not a fishing civilization, then what was? Was this a small number? Did the human civilization have a wrong understanding of the number of eternal beings? Ba Rong greeted them one by one. This was his home from now on. Yes, it was definitely his home because he could not run away. The stone golem also obediently stayed outside Xiang City to guard it. He also told Mr. Mu and the others that the technological civilization had been defeated. In any case, this trip was to deal with the technological civilization. He did not expect to catch a fish back. Of course, there was also the situation of the death universe, which made everyone feel heavy. The shadow of the death universe had always shrouded everyone's hearts, and now it felt closer and closer. Lu Yin had not used the power of silence because he was afraid of attracting the death universe. He could only use it once in a while, but the death universe would still come. I will try my best to lead the death universe away, as long as it comes, Lu Yin said. Shuata Shangyu and the others looked at Lu Yin with complicated eyes. He had finally walked the path of Qinglian Shangyu. This was fate. Every civilization that climbed had an existence that carried everything. Soon after, Lu Yin lay in the hanging coffin. It was time to turn in the mission. He had taken the compulsory mission to draw the star chart and handed it to Lu Swan and the others to buy time to complete it slowly. Now that hundreds of years had passed, it was time to turn it in. Anyway, it was just a small mission and would not affect anything. He could also use this mission to try to attract the black unknown again and learn as much as possible. 8 colors, mission complete. Keep the reward. Okay, do you want to accept a new mission? Yes. Please choose a mission. Or capture a tributary of the river of time or draw a star chart. You can also choose the compulsory mission issued by Trace. Lu Yin was surprised. You issued compulsory missions? Yes. What mission? 5-star mission, find the 10-eyed crow. Lu Yin raised a brow. Looking for the 10-eyed crow. It seemed like the unknowns had set their sights on the 10-eyed crow. That made sense. Back then, Ba Color had asked him about the whereabouts of the 10-eyed crow, but he did not say anything. Ba Color must have cared a lot about the 10-eyed crow. No matter what, the 10-eyed crow was once known as an invincible existence in terms of individual combat strength. His crow immobilization had played a crucial role in a few battles. This was only one crow immobilization, but the 10-eyed crow had 10 extreme talents, so one could imagine how terrifying it was. Anyone who obtained one would be able to transform their strength. His goal now was to turn Crow around. If he did not know where to find the 10-eyed crow, he would definitely drag it away, and he would not have the chance to obtain it. Red Hero is the most suitable candidate for this mission. Why didn't he accept it? No comment. Alright, I'll take it, Lu Yin said. 8 Color said, are you sure you want to accept? 5-star mission, find the 10-eyed crow. Yes. Lu Yin originally wanted to accept the mission of drawing a star chart to lure the black unknown and bait it, but he did not expect such a mission to appear. This was a free 5-star mission reward, and as long as he could obtain the remaining 2 eyes, the 10-eyed crow would not be a big deal. After accepting the mission, Lu Yin was about to leave when a voice sounded, "You didn't accept the mission of drawing a star chart." Lu Yin's eyes twitched. It was the black unknown. The mission of drawing a star chart came from the black unknown, and since Lu Yin had submitted the mission, the black unknown would naturally know about it. That was why it could speak to Lu Yin through 8 color. "No, it's not challenging," Lu Yin replied. Star chart missions are divided into unknowns, and there are missions for every star level. "Help me complete the 5-star mission, and I'll help you kill Red Hero," the black unknown said calmly. However, its words sent chills down Lu Yin's spine. "Kill Red Hero," and it said it in such a calm tone that Lu Yin did not know how to respond. Red Hero was an apex powerhouse who was compatible with 2 laws of the universe. If not for Qinglian Yu and Elder Jiu Wen's joint scheme, Red Hero might have already broken through and reached the same level as Patriarch Shan. This level was considered a peak existence throughout history, and although it had not broken through, it was still extremely powerful. However, the black unknown seemed to be able to kill it at any time. Lu Yin confirmed, "You want to help me kill Red Hero? As long as you agree, I can do it at any time. This is Shizong, and 8 color is listening to your words." "So what?" The black unknown's voice sounded. It was still so calm, as if it was chatting with an ordinary person. However, at this moment, Lu Yin looked at Shizong, and the black unknown seemed to be staring at him like a pair of eyes. He was silent for a while. "Red Hero is not as valuable as a 5-star mission. Completing a 5-star mission is equivalent to destroying a fishing civilization, and Red Hero is clearly not at the level of a fishing civilization." The black unknown, "You said it yourself, and 8 color is listening. I need to think of a way to help you kill Red Hero without being caught breaking the rules by the black unknown, even if I don't care about the rules." Lu Yin's eyes narrowed. "Who are you? Is it important?" "Very important. We can make a deal." Lu Yin's eyes flashed. "Let's talk about it when I want to make a deal." The black unknown spoke slowly. "Your human civilization has a huge weakness, and this weakness will never allow you to turn the tables. Do you know what it is?" "I'm all ears," Lu Yin said. The black unknown, "You guys are too obvious." Lu Yin raised an eyebrow. "The positions of the 3 universes." "No, it's your human civilization. It's too obvious. Although the 9th base has been defeated, their glorious light shines on you like a lighthouse, allowing you to be watched by others with every step you take. When you reach a certain limit, it may be the limit of your life." Lu Yin did not refute it, as this was a fact. For example, the invisible unknown, this unknown master of balance had cut off the meteor realm with a single sword strike, preventing them from ever coming into contact with the immortal civilization. The immortal civilization was another human civilization, and if they were united, they would be extremely strong, but if they were separated, that was not necessarily the case. Lu Yin's every step was watched by his enemies. The reason why the 9th base was so glorious was not only because of the birth of so many extraordinary powerhouses, but also because no one paid attention to them. By the time others had no choice but to pay attention to them, it was already too late. You guys, on the other hand, were limited from the beginning. You know this, Xianling and the other civilizations that participated in the siege of the 9th base were all like this. You guys seem to be free, but in reality, you are all trapped in a range. You can't break free, you can't escape, you can't rush out, and you can't win. What's worse is that your location has been exposed. The positions of the 3 universes are like lighthouses to everyone. No matter how talented you are, or what you have mastered, even if you have reached the level of the three universes, you can't break free from this shackle. This is the deepest shackle that binds your human civilization. It comes from various civilizations, and also from your human civilization itself. Lu Yin asked, "What do you want to do after saying so much?" "The black unknown, I can help you break free from this shackle." Lu Yin laughed, "Just you alone? Not enough. What do you think?" "Enough." At this moment, Lu Yin's curiosity towards the black unknown reached its peak. Where did it get the confidence to say that it could help the human civilization break free from this shackle? When it was fighting against Xianling, its opponent was just Xianling, who had reached the level of the two universes, just like the old man He. The one that blocked the black unknown and faced the supreme venerate was the white unknown, and the one that challenged the heavens was the ambassador of balance. Perhaps it was hiding its strength. Every unknown was hiding itself, but to say that the black unknown alone could help the human civilization face the threats of multiple civilizations was impossible. The ninth base couldn't do it, and it couldn't do it either. Otherwise, how could it still be an unknown? It had already transcended the unknown. Although he didn't believe it, Lu Yin knew that the black unknown was definitely terrifyingly strong. However, he couldn't tell exactly what level it was at. Ancestor Shan had once been threatened outside the unknown, but he had stopped in his tracks. Inside the unknown, there was a terrifying powerhouse that even Ancestor Shan didn't dare to face. Lu Yin had always wanted to find this powerhouse. Perhaps this powerhouse was the one that killed Ancestor Shan. Lu Yin slowly said, "Since you are so powerful, tell me who was the one that targeted Ancestor Shan and killed him." "The black unknown, this has something to do with you." "Of course, I was at the scene." "I won't say that you didn't pay the same price." "What price do you want?" "Complete a 5-star mission and draw a star chart." Lu Yin frowned. "Just a piece of information is worth a 5-star mission. This information is worth more than the red hero." The black unknown was certain. Lu Yin sighed, "Then forget it." "No deal. We'll talk about it later." The black unknown suddenly asked, "There is knowledge about the human civilization in the unknown, corresponding to the 6 stars and 5 stars mission rewards. Why didn't you directly ask the 8 colors to exchange?" Without waiting for Lu Yin's answer, it continued, "Because you know that knowledge doesn't equate to strength. The strength of the 3 civilizations in your universe has been locked down. Even if I told you the coordinates, you wouldn't be able to unite. However, I'm different." Lu Yin's eyes flashed. "I can help you exchange. No one will know." Lu Yin said, "The 8 colors will know. The unknown is a place where the rules are greater than the sky. The 8 colors are the 8 colors, and the balancer is the balancer." Lu Yin's heart skipped a beat as he understood. So, limiting the human civilization was the balancer's responsibility, but the 8 colors' responsibility was different. However, the 8 colors couldn't casually leak the conversation between the unknowns. This was the black unknown's intention. As long as he didn't reveal his information to the balancer, he could do something. Chapter 44-32. "Give me the coordinates," Lu Yin said. The black unknown entity was delighted. "You're willing to trade? We'll talk about it later." Lu Yin received the coordinates and left. Trade? How could it be that simple? This black unknown entity had even dared to kill Red Hero and ignore the existence of the 8 colors. Lu Yin couldn't help it rashly before determining whether it was friend or foe. That wasn't right either, it was practically an enemy. Aside from human civilization, 99% of the creatures outside the area were enemies. The reason why Lu Yin wanted the coordinates was to leave a possibility open and only use it when he had no other choice in the future. He had the 6 stars unknown reward, and now he had the 5-star reward of exchanging it for the black unknown entity. He had more and more trump cards. The premise was that he had to complete the star chart. A 5-star mission corresponded to a huge star chart, far more than a 3-star mission. The coordinates were also quite far away, and it was a dangerous mission. No one knew what would happen during the process. Lu Yin found Lu Xuan and gave him the choice. Lu Xuan chose to do it without hesitation. He didn't know the reason, but since Lu Yin had said so, then there was a reason to do it. He knew what Lu Yin had done for human civilization, but Lu Yin wasn't the only one. Once this mission was over, he would be able to call Lu Yin's 7th bro in an official manner. Lu Yin went into seclusion. Ever since the meteor realm had been severed, he had wanted to go into seclusion to pave a path for human civilization. However, too many things had happened. War after war, accident after accident, and he wasn't sure if his seclusion could accomplish what he wanted, so it had been delayed until now. Now that the universe of death was near, he had to try. He wanted to try the 9 clones technique. He still remembered how he felt when he first learned about the technique. The universe actually had the power to split one's body into 9. At that time, he had yearned to obtain this technique so that he could be like progenitor Qin, splitting himself into 9 and cultivating 9 different powers. Finally, he could fuse them and become invincible. However, when he obtained the technique, he hesitated. Because of Xiao Luo's experience, he had some misgivings. Splitting into 9 clones and cultivating at the same time sounded tempting. However, as time passed, the consciousness of the clones would gradually become independent. The better ones were like Ancestor Qin, who could suppress the consciousness of the clones and fuse with them. The most tragic one was Xia Jiuyo, who was directly fused with Xiao Luo's clone and died. Even though both of them had their consciousness split into 9, Xia Jiuyo and Xiao Luo weren't the same person. They had different thoughts, different personalities, and different hobbies. How could they be considered the same person? It was precisely because of Xia Jiuyo's fate that Lu Yin had delayed his cultivation of the 9 clones technique. Over the years, he would occasionally think of this cultivation technique. In fact, if one could maintain the uniqueness of one's consciousness, one could cultivate it. However, if one's consciousness was unique, how could one's clone cultivate it? The biggest advantage of the 9 clones technique was that one could split into 9. While others were cultivating alone, one could directly cultivate 9 different types of energy. Even if one cultivated the same type of energy, the efficiency would be 9 times that of others. This was the biggest advantage. Without this advantage, what value did the 9 clones technique have? Maintaining the uniqueness of one's consciousness meant losing the greatest value of the 9 clones technique. This result had caused Lu Yin to give up on cultivating it in the past, but now, his goal was different. He didn't want to cultivate it, but rather to carve out a different path. A path that was right under his nose. The 3 universes were too obvious, and he was too obvious as well. His every move was being watched, which meant that the 3 universes would forever be trapped in a cage. Just as the Black Unknown had said, he couldn't break free, escape, or win. Ever since the collapse of the 9 bases, the human civilization had become a thorn in the side of the various powerful civilizations in the universe. Lu Yin's path from the moment he had stepped into the cultivation world had been dazzling, but the process hadn't been as eye-catching. The current situation was also inconsistent with his personality. Thus, he urgently needed to escape, both for himself and for the sake of human civilization. The 9 clones technique had finally come in handy. It was a pity that he had lost the advantage of cultivating it, but if it could help him escape, then it would be of great value. Cultivating the 9 clones technique was very simple. One just had to sense one's consciousness and form it into a nearly corporeal state. Then, one could split into 9 and use one's own blood to reconstruct the physical body. The 8 consciousnesses would then be fused into the 8 bodies. This was the 9 clones technique. It seems simple now, but in reality, the first step had stumped countless people back in the Tianyuan universe. How many people in the Xia family had been able to learn the 9 clones technique? Too few, far too few. Sensing one's consciousness and forming a corporeal state required one to have an extremely high degree of control over one's consciousness or be born with it. Most of the Xia family members who cultivated the 9 clones technique were of the latter type. If one didn't have the latter type of talent, then completing the first step would have been as difficult as ascending to the heavens. That was an era where even half-ancestors were rare. However, things were different now, as many cultivators could do it. The difficulty lay in the first step. The first step was the key to the 9 clones technique, and what Lu Yin was trying to do right now was to erase this first step. Instead of splitting his consciousness into 9 clones, he wanted to set his consciousness as the only one in the universe. Only his own consciousness could exist in the universe, and there would be no second consciousness. This sort of change to the 9 clones technique was something that Lu Yin would not have been able to do in the past, even when he was still a progenitor. However, things were different now, as his consciousness was so strong that it was rarely seen in the world. The establishment of the Wu Manor was enough to allow a group of cultivators to participate in external battles in the form of consciousnesses without dying themselves. This was actually a kind of cultivation path for a civilization. The Wu Manor could gather the consciousness of the entire human civilization, and it could even become an absolute method of advancement. Lu Yin went into seclusion, and the Tao of causal heaven continued to envelop the 3 universes. As long as the Tao of causal heaven existed, outsiders would know that he was definitely there. Currently, human civilization was still relatively peaceful, and Lu Yin's seclusion lasted for more than 10 years. After more than 10 years, he opened his eyes and raised a hand. A drop of blood appeared at his fingertip and slowly dripped down, causing the void to continuously tear apart. As the blood gradually dripped down, blood-red lines continuously condensed at the location where the drop landed, followed by white bones and flesh. Finally, a figure stood in front of him. It was another Lu Yin, an identical Lu Yin. This was another body that Lu Yin had created using his own flesh and blood. Although it was far from being as strong as his own body, this body's strength came from a single drop of blood. However, even just a single drop of his own blood was unimaginable. Back then, progenitor Chen's blood had blasted open the door to the 6th mainland, and now, Lu Yin's blood was enough to light up the entire sky. Even a powerhouse who had crossed bitter adversity would not be able to withstand a single drop of blood. Lu Yin was the strongest rogue in history, and he was able to fight against an eternal realm cultivator who was compatible with 2 universal laws. This single drop of blood was enough to give him the strength of a rogue. Lu Yin felt that something was off when he looked at the identical Lu Yin in front of him, and he casually waved his hand. The figure in front of him once again turned into a drop of blood and fell to the ground. He condensed another drop of blood and remolded it. Another figure appeared, and it was still Lu Yin. However, this figure's face had been changed, and it looked like a stranger. Lu Yin looked at the stranger in front of him. He was just experimenting. This clone only had physical strength, and the 9 clones could strip their innate gifts, techniques, and so on from their clones. He had not yet decided what kind of power to give this clone, and he would have to change it according to the situation. It was not difficult to create a clone from his own flesh and blood, but the biggest problem was maintaining the uniqueness of his consciousness. When the clone was not in the 3 universes, the main body's consciousness would be asleep. Once the main body's consciousness woke up, the clone's consciousness would disperse. What would happen to the clone then? If this was not handled well, then this attempt would be a joke. In the past, Lu Yin had used various disguises and relied on his Dai's 6 pips to almost be omniscient about certain people, allowing him to roam freely among the various major powers and play with his enemies. However, the battlefield had now changed. Eternal realms were not easy to fool, and his disguises would definitely be seen through. Furthermore, he could not leave the three universes. Once the clone joined the other powers, the distance between it and the three universes would not be so simple. With such a long distance, how could this single consciousness protect both sides? He had to awaken the main body's consciousness while keeping the clone safe. Lu Yin pondered this, as this was not easy to solve. He materialized his consciousness and integrated some of it into the clone. The clone's consciousness was actually similar to the consciousness on the Pathfinder stone. It could only see its surroundings and did not have the ability to think on its own. Lu Yin closed his eyes and opened them again. His vision changed, and his consciousness appeared in the clone's body. This clone was now himself, and he looked at his hands. They were so weak, and he was not used to feeling so weak. He felt like he had returned to the time when he had faced the humanoid green immortal. At that time, his physical strength had been similar to this. He had struggled to fight against the humanoid green immortal and the droplet green immortal, and he had had to rely on various methods, especially willpower, to fight against the most ordinary eternal realms. Fortunately, he was not as strong as when he had first encountered the hexagonal monster. Otherwise, he would not have been able to defeat the most ordinary eternal realms. As long as this clone obtained one of his powers, it would be enough to become a rogue. He looked at his main body and then at his clone before looking for Long Shi. Long Shi looked at Lu Yin and the doppelganger, the 9 doppelgangers technique. Lu Yin shook his head. I changed it, but not so many. The consciousness is also unique, so it will not devour the self. Long Shi heaved a sigh of relief. That's good. Although the Xia family's 9 clones technique is powerful, it has many drawbacks. As far as I know, Xia Shenfei spent a lot of effort to suppress his clones. If not for the help of Shenwu Sky, he would not have been able to find some of his clones. Lu Yin fought with Shenwu Sky and fought against Xia Shenfei. At that time, Xia Shenfei had already merged his 9 clones into one and could use Shenwu Qi. He did not know anything before that. But the biggest advantage of the 9 clones technique is the clones cultivation. You have only one consciousness, how can you cultivate your clones? Long Shi did not understand. Lu Yin had nothing to hide from Long Shi. I just want to find another path. Long Shi pursed her lips and nodded silently. She did not say anything more. Help me awaken the main body. How? Just shake it. Long Shi walked to Lu Yin's main body and shook it. Chapter 44-33. At this moment, Lu Yin's only consciousness was in his clone's body. Although it was only a tiny bit, and he could change the existence of his consciousness, what if it was far away? He would not be able to move his consciousness on his own. Someone had to move the main body and awaken the main consciousness for his consciousness to return to the main body. What he needed to do now was to see what would happen to his clone's consciousness after his consciousness returned to the main body. Long Shi blinked, raised a finger, and poked Lu Yin's face. Lu Yin's main body opened his eyes, and Long Shi hurriedly retracted her finger, pretending to be curious as she looked at the clone. At this moment, the clone's consciousness had scattered, and the moment Lu Yin's main body's consciousness was awakened, it was like a switch that was turned on and off. This was a helpless situation. If the clone went far away, and something happened in the 3 universes that awakened the main body, the clone would fall to the ground. That would be a joke. Everyone knew that there was a problem. He knew that this was the biggest problem even before he tried the 9 clones technique, and he had to solve it now. This was the only way he could escape the encirclement of his enemies. These enemies had once defeated the powerful 9 bases, so how could the 3 universes break through? Even if Patriarch Shan was still alive and helped wholeheartedly, Lu Yin did not think that it would be possible. Just the unknown alone was too unfathomable. He had to keep trying. Long Shi, wake up the main body in 10 breaths. Okay. 10 breaths later, Luin opened his eyes and saw Long Shi's curious gaze. Wait a day this time. Wake me up a day later. Okay. A day later, Luin opened his eyes. Long hair floated in front of him, and a fragrance filled the air. Long Shi stood calmly to the side. Half a year. Wake me up in half a year. Okay. Luin tried the consciousness technique again and again. He wanted the clone to retain a bit of consciousness after the main body woke up, even if it could only see the surroundings. As long as he could see the surroundings, he could teleport over and bring the clone back. The clone could not be lost, and it had to be fused with one of his own powers. Time continued to pass, and the intervals between Lu Yin's attempts grew longer and longer. Long Shi, on the other hand, did not get tired, and her smile grew. Sometimes, Lu Yin did not even know how he was awakened. He was trying, and Long Shi was doing the same. A few decades later, Lu Yin was far away from the three universes. In the next instant, the scene in front of him changed, and he woke up. At the same time, an image of the universe flashed through his mind. This was an image that his avatar had seen. Although it was fleeting, it meant that there was a time gap between the avatar's consciousness dissipating and the main body waking up. Lu Yin was excited. The distance between his doppelganger and his consciousness's uniqueness had been the biggest obstacle since the very beginning. He had been afraid that his main body would awaken and his doppelganger would suddenly collapse. But who would have thought that distance might not be an issue at all? He tried again. This time, he was even further away from the three universes. It was a distance of 600 years at the speed of an eternal life realm expert. He waited for Long Shi to wake him up. Not long after, Lu Yin opened his eyes, and the same image of the universe flashed through his mind. It was only a fleeting moment, but he was certain that the moment his main body awoke, his avatar's consciousness would disperse. However, due to the great distance between them, there would still be a gap in time. Just like how light, sound, and so on had time to travel. But where was the transmission of consciousness? Lu Yin fell into deep thought. Long Shi stood aside and waited quietly. Her gaze was gentle and her face was slightly flushed. Over the past several decades, she had been the happiest when Lu Yin was trying, but his main body had not moved at all. This meant that she had been alone with Lu Yin for so long. If the attempt was successful, Lu Yin's main body would definitely stay in the three universes. Then, they would spend more time together. Lu Yin did not let anyone else wake him up except for her. She was really happy. Lu Yin had no choice. He wanted Ming Yan to wake up his main body, but Ming Yan was in the mind manor, which belonged to his main body. It was equivalent to her being in seclusion, and he did not know when to wake her up. Only Long Shi had been in the above heaven sect and was very clear about the outside world. Others would also wake Lu Yin up through her. Not long after, Lu Yin was at a distance of 1,000 years at the eternal life realm in the three universes. This was the furthest he had been from the three universes so far, except for the unknown forced war and the unknown coordinates of the star chart he had drawn for the black unknown. When his main body awoke, he found that the time it took for his doppelganger's consciousness to disperse had increased to nearly 1 second. The further away he was, the longer it took for his doppelganger's consciousness to disperse. It was obvious that there was a transmission channel. Since there was only one consciousness, no matter how far away the doppelganger was from the main body, they could sense each other. Then, what was the transmission channel of consciousness? This made Lu Yin think of the control the immortal plume had on the immortal master. No matter where the immortal master was, he could feel it. There was also the unknown war, where the 8 colors could appear anywhere at any time. He could see some channels clearly, but there were others that he could not see clearly. It was as if there were countless channels in the square-inch space, but he could only see a few. Since there was a transmission channel of consciousness, and it was connected to each other only when it was unique, then, was there a grand Tao of consciousness, like the grand Tao of time and the grand Tao of karma? Lu Yin did not know, but the scene he saw when he cut off the immortal plume tree suddenly appeared in his mind. The square-inch space was not as simple as it seemed. He thought back to the first time he left the Tianyuan universe and took Wu Jiang to the spiritualized universe. When he saw the square-inch space, he had many guesses. He thought that his guesses at that time were imaginative enough, but now he realized that human guesses were far from enough. Forget it, there were many things that he could not see clearly now, but he would be able to see clearly in the future. Breaking through to the eternal life realm was walking on a different level of life. At that time, he would definitely know a lot. Now, his attempt could be considered a success. The closer they were, the more likely they would fail. The further they were, the better. Thank you. The attempt is over. I will continue my seclusion, Lu Yin said to Long Shi. Long Shi was a little disappointed. She nodded and left. Although it was over, the memories of these years would never disappear. After Long Shi left, Lu Yin raised his hand, and the die appeared. It was time to roll the die. The power of deathly stillness could allow him to integrate into death, and it could also integrate into the bodies of other creatures in the dead universe. Now, the most uneasy thing was not knowing where the dead universe was. He wanted to see if he could find it this way. Lu Tianjing welcomed a special guest today. It was special because of his identity, but it was not special because everyone knew him. He was Tuo Lin. Tuo Lin was Lu Yin's disciple and was considered half a member of the Lu family. However, he rarely came to Lu Tianjing, so his arrival this time surprised the people in Lu Tianjing. Patriarch, why is Tuo Lin here? Hasn't he always been traveling the universe? Otherwise, he would stay in the above-the-sky sect, but he rarely sets foot in Lu Tianjing. The last time he was here was a long time ago, right? A member of the Lu family asked Lu Bujing, who was standing in front. Lu Bujing welcomed Tuo Lin. Tuo Lin's status was high, but in the Lu family, Lu Yin was still a junior. Above him were his father, Lu Qi, Patriarch Lu Tianyi, and Patriarch Lu Yuan. Logically speaking, Lu Bujing's seniority far surpassed Lu Yin's, so he should not welcome Tuo Lin. However, many people respected Tuo Lin. Lu Bujing had met Tuo Lin several times in the above-the-sky sect. Although they did not talk much, he liked this child. Furthermore, the Lu family's teleportation innate gift was related to Tuo Lin, so he came. Lu Bujing said, whether he comes or not has nothing to do with you. Just do your own thing and don't worry about other things. Yes, Patriarch. The Lu family members responded. Although they said so, they did not leave. They were curious about why Tuo Lin had come to Lu Tianjing. Among Lu Yin's disciples, Ku Wei was carefree and liked to show off. He had enjoyed the respect of Lu Yin's disciple over the years, but it was not excessive. It was just pure enjoyment. Huiken was vicious and cunning. This was related to his experience. He had seen the dangers of the world and would not easily trust others. However, he was not a bad person and was only good at protecting himself. Chu Songyun was the strongest. He had achieved eternal life with just one step forward. He had contributed greatly in the battle against Xianling and was one of the few powerhouses qualified to participate in that battle. Although he cultivated the emotionless Tao, he could distinguish between good and evil. He was a responsible person. Tuo Lin was the simplest. He had no desires at all. His respect for Lu Yin was carved into his bones. As Lu Yin's disciple, he was respected wherever he went. However, he was dispensable and never used this identity to do anything. However, no one could ignore him. This was because this kind of disciple was most loved by his master. Many people believed that Lu Yin's favorite disciple was Tuo Lin. In addition, there was an invisible Qing Xian by Tuo Lin's side. Her name was Yen Ryu, and her strength was not low. She had contributed greatly in the battle against the insect nest civilization. The Lu family's teleportation innate gift was related to Yen Ryu and Tuo Lin. Thus, the Lu family respected Tuo Lin the most. The Lu family's disciples were curious as to why Tuo Lin had suddenly come to visit Lu Tianjing. Tuo Lin did not cultivate and his cultivation was extremely low. It was said that he did not have meridians in the past. Later on, his meridians were filled, but he liked to read more. It was like he had put the cart before the horse. Reading was for the sake of cultivation, but he had given up on cultivation for the sake of reading. This was incomprehensible. In Lu Tianjing, Tuo Lin was a little reserved. Xiao Yu, they're too enthusiastic. I'm not used to it. That's right. This is our home. Master's home is our home. I shouldn't treat them as outsiders. I think I've seen that person before. Xiao Yu, he smiled at me. All right, everyone smiled at me. It's good that there are so many people. We've traveled through the universe and walked on Master's path. I don't think we've met any bad people. That's right. Master beat the bad people away in advance. We've walked on Master's path, so of course we won't see any bad people. You're smart, Xiao Yu. As he spoke, Tuo Lin saw Lu Bujing and hurriedly bowed. Junior Tuo Lin greets Senior. Lu Bujing smiled as he helped Tuo Lin up. He glanced around, but he still could not see that Qing Xian called Yen Ryu. He felt a chill run down his spine. No need to be so polite. Coming to Lu Tianjing means that you're home. Come, I'll show you around. Will I disturb Senior? You're looking at the scenery that Master Lu has seen before. Sorry to trouble you, Senior. Lu Bujing laughed and brought Tuo Lin around Lu Tianjing. The place was huge, and it would take a long time to finish looking around. However, Lu Bujing had only brought Tuo Lin to the places that Lu Yin had visited before, especially the cemetery where the Lu family was buried. Tuo Lin bowed respectfully and said something. After a while, he left with Lu Bujing. Chapter 44-34. Right, Tuo Lin, why did you come to Lu Tianjing? Lu Bujing asked. Tuo Lin replied, yes, I wish to go to Xiang City. Lu Bujing was shocked, you want to go to Xiang City? Why? Over the years, many people had entered Xiang City, not just Lu Yin. Anyone who was willing could apply, and the Lu family would bring a group of people there regularly. Lu Yin also hoped that someone would be able to find something in Xiang City. There were countless opportunities in the universe, and it was impossible for all of them to belong to him alone. He couldn't find a way to control Xiang City, but that didn't mean that no one in the human civilization could. Some people's opportunities might be in Xiang City, and if possible, he would facilitate it. He wasn't the kind of person to hold all the benefits in his hands. Xiang City was the hope of the entire human civilization. Once it was controlled, the safety of the three universes would greatly increase. The immortal feather attack from before was unlikely to happen. Lu Bujing had arranged for many people to be brought to Xiang City by the Lu family's disciples who could teleport, but he hadn't expected Tuo Lin to go as well. Tuo Lin's expression was sincere. Master has been to Xiang City many times, saying that he hopes to control it. I'm incompetent, and although I can't help Master much, I can at least watch over every brick and tile. Lu Bujing looked deeply at Tuo Lin. He could tell that the youth was speaking from the bottom of his heart. He sighed, it's Master Lu's fortune to have a disciple like you. Tuo Lin hurriedly said, it's my fortune to be able to become Master's disciple. Lu Bujing smiled, but he was troubled by Tuo Lin's serious expression. Xiang City is actually very dangerous. Once a cultivator enters the cultivation world, their life and death are determined by the heavens. Many people go to Xiang City, but there are always people who die inside. What about you? Tuo Lin was firm. I'm not afraid of death. I only hope to watch over every brick and tile for master. Lu Bujing thought about it. I need to report to the ancestor. Wait a moment. Tuo Lin nodded. I'll have to trouble you, senior. Lu Bujing went to find ancestor Lu Yuan, but the latter wasn't in Lu Tianjing. He could only find Lu Hui and have her bring a message to ancestor Lu Yuan to ask about Tuo Lin's situation. Lu Yin was still in seclusion, so he couldn't ask directly. Not long after, ancestor Lu Yuan let Lu Hui pass the message that Tuo Lin enter Xiang City. Tuo Lin was a cultivator. Regardless of his identity, no one could deprive him of his right to cultivate. Lu Yin's disciples shouldn't be protected. Lu Yin had carried the human race's banner and climbed with great difficulty, so his disciples should do the same. Enjoyment should be left to the ordinary people. However, as Lu Yin's disciple, he still had some special privileges. For example, Lu Hui had personally sent him to Xiang City. The others had to wait in batches, but he could go immediately. Outside Xiang City's city gate, the stone monster stood far away. It was Xiang City's protector, but it didn't dare to approach, because it was traumatized. Tuo Lin's arrival surprised it. Was this little child the disciple of that human Lu Yin? No matter how he looked at it, he was so humble. Tuo Lin was rather polite. He greeted the stone monster and the surrounding people who had entered and exited. Then, he walked to the city gate and stopped. Xiao Yu, after we enter, we will be separated for a short time. I'll be careful. You too. Take your time. Well, okay, I'll definitely build it for you inside. You should work hard on the sculpture too. With that, he took a step forward and entered the city. In a remote corner of Xiang City, a shadow flashed past. It was a wild cat with a fierce gaze. From time to time, children would chase after it and throw stones at it, but they couldn't hit it at all. The wild cat didn't retaliate. It just shuttled back and forth between the houses, as if it was searching for something. He was Hui Kan, and he had also entered Xiang City much earlier than Tuo Lin. He had entered Xiang City with a group of people who had applied to enter. Ancestor Lu Yuan was also aware of this, but he didn't treat Hui Kan differently. Tuo Lin wasn't treated differently aside from being brought here by Lu Hui. In ancestor Lu Yuan's eyes, no matter what status one had, as long as they stepped into the cultivation world, they had to be prepared to die. Hui Kan had turned into a cat after entering Xiang City, a fierce wild cat that was covered in scars. He was also looking for a way to control Xiang City. Just because his master couldn't find it didn't mean that he couldn't either. As a descendant of Hui Kan, he believed that he was extremely intelligent and should be able to see things that were different from others. However, he couldn't see anything even after entering Xiang City for so long. This was clearly a city where ordinary people lived. If he hadn't turned into a wild cat, he would have suspected that someone was playing a prank on him. What was the difference between those mortals and those outside? Especially those children, who chased after him and threw stones at him. It was too vile. Hui Kan squatted under an abandoned house and looked at the people on the street. His gaze was sharp, as if he wanted to discover something. Then, he was stunned as he stared blankly at a person who was curiously sizing up a stone sculpture stall. The person was constantly asking the stall owner questions, and his pupils shrank to the size of a needle. Is that Tuo Lin? A person? In the Heaven's Origin universe, Lu Yin exhaled as he watched the die stop spinning. One pip, then another pip. He had already rolled a pip several times. He needed to rest for 10 days. Even at his current cultivation realm, rolling the die too many times would still make him dizzy. This die was a turbid treasure, right? It definitely was, but he didn't know what level it was. He looked at the pips on the die and felt a little sad. 6 people had helped him achieve his goal. If his 6 siblings hadn't died, they would definitely have been geniuses as well. 10 days later, he tapped the die and continued. He placed the Go Lien on his knee. When things reached an extreme, they would have an adverse effect on the Go Lien, and it turned into a deathly stillness. He watched the die slowly stop at 6 pips, and his eyes widened. It was here. His consciousness appeared in the dark space, and he hurriedly searched for it. He kept shuttling back and forth, but he couldn't find anything. After searching for a while, it seemed like he was too far away from the dead universe. He continued. Time continued to pass, and a month later, Lu Yin looked at the faint light in his consciousness. It was Zhu's consciousness, and he had already merged with it several times. He didn't want to do it again, as Zhu's memories were worthless. He left the dark space and continued. It wasn't easy to find the dead universe's creatures. Lu Yin walked out of seclusion and continuously teleported in one direction. He continuously teleported until he was about 500 years away from the 3 universes before stopping. He might be closer to the dead universe if he rolled here. He didn't know which direction the dead universe was in, so he could only rely on luck. If he didn't find anything in this direction, he would go in the next direction. Half a year later, Lu Yin's consciousness entered the dark space and saw several balls of light in the distance. He was excited, he had finally found them. Was it in this direction? His consciousness rushed over and found the brightest ball of light. It was called the brightest ball of light, but that was only relative. The ball of light was the brightest ball of light, and Lu Yin guessed that it wasn't too powerful. There was no other way, as his die had 6 pips. Even the dead universe's creatures might not be able to see the ball of light in the dark space. Lu Yin still couldn't figure out the principle or technique behind it. He fused with the ball of light. Music suddenly boomed in his ears, and he could clearly see his surroundings. Strangely shaped skeletons walked on the ground, swaying rhythmically as if they were dancing. This was a beautiful world with blue skies and white clouds, green mountains and clear waters. It was a joyous world, and all the creatures were dancing to the music. The only discordant thing was that the music was too loud, and it was so loud that even the bones in their bodies were swaying. The dancing skeletons under the blue skies and white clouds were all skeletons of all sorts of strange shapes. Lu Yin looked around and saw endless skeletons dancing. He had never even dreamed of such a scene before. He looked at the ground and then into the distance. He could tell that the ground beneath his feet was both a piece of land and some sort of musical instrument. If this instrument was magnified countless times, it would become this world. He turned around and saw that the end of the mountain range was filled with darkness, causing his breathing to quicken. This was the power of deathly stillness, and he had never felt such a boundless deathly stillness before. It had formed another world, and it was like a creeping evil spirit. The music was coming from there, and as the music vibrated, the evil spirits laughed, the blue sky shook, and ripples appeared. The river shook, and fish bones leaped about. The mountain range shook, and the bones of the wild beasts cheered. The ground shook, and the sleeping skeletons instinctively beat the rhythm. Just what kind of world was this? There were endless skeletons as far as the eye could see, and the black and white formed a stark contrast. Memories continuously flooded into Lu Yin's mind, and he stood rooted to the spot as he looked at the deathly stillness and the faintly discernible castle. There was an existence there, and its name was Withered Bones. It was one of the strongest abysses in the death universe, and this was Withered Bones' world, a world of music. The booming music continued to explode, and Lu Yin subconsciously moved his body. This instinctive dance came from the bones that he had fused with, and it was like the source of life. Happiness came from every movement and every rhythm. He was certain that a normal body of flesh and blood would definitely explode under the booming music. This was a world of bones. This was one of the Death Universe's abysses, withered bones world. Lu Yin continuously checked the skeleton's memories, but he couldn't understand how a skeleton could have such memories. It was as if the skeleton had been bestowed with life and was connected to the power of deathly stillness. The skeleton's memories were always filled with dance and rhythm. It was the joy of this world, and it also yearned for the castle in the distance. Even a skeleton had its own desires. It hoped to enter the castle, as that was the happiest place in this world. If one wanted to enter the castle, they would need to form a band, and only with withered bones recognition could they enter the castle. This had nothing to do with strength. Strength was the most worthless thing in this world, as no one could surpass withered bones. Withered bones was the creator of this world, and it didn't recognize anyone based on strength. In any case, no one could compare to withered bones. What it recognized was music, and whether or not one could keep up with its rhythm. Memories continued to flood into Lu Yin's mind, and he also saw the skeleton's memories before it had been bestowed with life. It was a shocking exchange of life and death. In reality, the bone language was a transformation of life from one form to another. The skeleton's memories were retained, and so were its cognition. The only thing that changed was its loyalty. These skeletons' loyalty came from the life they had been bestowed, and their loyalty was to the bone language and the death universe. Chapter 44-35. Lu Yin looked at the castle in the distance, hoping that the next creature to integrate would be from within the castle. Had Lu Gu withered? He remembered the skeleton wearing sunglasses with colorful strings and a bright green hat. There were strange patterns engraved on the skeleton, but he did not know how strong it was. The death universe was finally about to unveil its mysterious veil. It was a pity that this skeleton was too weak and knew too little. This was the furthest place in this world. The music suddenly stopped, and all the skeletons became motionless. The fish bones that had jumped out of the lake were suspended in midair. At this moment, the wind stopped, and even time seemed to stop, not daring to cross the line. Lu Yin wanted to move, but his body did not. Was this an instinct formed by fear, or was it a flaw that had been given life by the bone language? The next moment, with the castle as the center, darkness engulfed the world. Beneath his feet, the mountains, and the sky all became transparent. It was as if they had suddenly appeared in the dark depths of the starry sky. In addition to the skeletons and the dark castle, he could also see a distant universe where a cosmic civilization existed. Outside the cosmic civilization, a shadow stood quietly. It was an eternal being, and it looked over with vigilance and reverence. Inside the cosmic civilization, there were also countless shadows standing in the starry sky, waiting for a great battle. The music suddenly changed. It was no longer as loud as before. Instead, it turned into a graceful sound of a zither. The rhythm given by the darkness was beautiful in the hands of the shadow at the top of the castle. It was gentle but carried a hint of desolation. It was sometimes exciting and sometimes gentle. As the shadows walked to the top of the castle, the sound of an ensemble announced the arrival of war. Countless skeletons rushed into the distance. The eternal being outside the cosmic civilization had a ferocious look in his eyes. Kill. He took a step forward, and the rhythm of the music guided the life to find a new home. The eternal being's skeleton suddenly pierced through his skin as if he had been imprisoned for countless years and crawled out. It was bloody and terrifying, shocking countless creatures in the civilization and causing them to flee frantically. The music grew louder and louder, as if announcing the addition of a newcomer. The world beneath his feet entered the universe, causing it to distort and collapse. Countless skeletons crawled out from the bodies of the creatures and danced to the music. They ran happily towards the castle, having been reborn. The music became more and more passionate, announcing the victory of the war. Luin watched this scene quietly. It was simple, very simple. No one had made a move, and an eternal being died just like that. It was not really dead, but had just become a new life and joined this world, eagerly heading towards the castle. Countless skeletons joined this world. A sigh came from the side. Another competitor. It was a skeleton that was the closest to the one that Luin had fused with, and it looked rather distressed. Luin looked at it, and it looked back at Luin. It grinned and separated its bones, trying to be as friendly as possible. Do you want to form a band? I'm very talented in music. Luin retracted his gaze and looked at the castle once more. The figures at the very top of the castle had all disappeared into it. Those shadows were all skeletons. The first one standing at the top was Withered Bones. It had the appearance of a standing dinosaur, but it looked so elegant when the music changed. It directed the music, directed the war, and made a civilization disappear and become its vassal. This was how the Death Universe fought. Withdrawing from the fusion, Luin opened his eyes and looked into the distance. Loku's withering sword was in that direction, but he didn't know how far away it was. His Harther emotions were heavy. Lugukujin was rather difficult to deal with. Not to mention his own strength, just the eternal life forms under his command were troublesome. With the bone language, no one knew how many Eternal Realm subordinates he had. Even if these Eternal Realm cultivators couldn't display their true strength because they had lost their flesh, they were still Eternal Realm cultivators. Especially with the bone language's means, the Death Universe itself had very few karmic restraints. They didn't kill, but gave life and controlled it. How could one deal with this? Once Loku's withering sword started a war with the three universes, would the same thing happen? Luin also knew the bone language, and he was confident that he could prevent a group of people from being controlled by the bone language. However, his strength was much weaker than Loku's, and he couldn't protect everyone. The most important thing now was to see where Loku's withering sword was and the power it controlled. There was one more thing that he had forgotten. In fact, he should have thought of it earlier. The die had 6 pips. Since it was also a fusion of consciousness, how far could it go? How did 6 pips manage to bring his consciousness to such a faraway place? Luin looked at the die and continued to roll it. He wanted to see the Death Universe as clearly as possible. Rolling the die was a matter of luck. If he was lucky, he could get 6 pips immediately. He had rolled 6 pips several times before, but if he was unlucky, he might not be able to get 6 pips even after 10 or 20 tries. There was a Qian Shu in Mount Supreme, and Luin had promised to let him go as long as he wrote 5 luck characters. He had spent 50 years writing the first luck character, but it got harder and harder to write the later ones. Luin and Qian Shu used to think that writing this character depended on one's cultivation, but now they understood that it depended on the character itself. There were only 8 luck characters in the spring and autumn scroll for so many years. In fact, when he thought about it carefully, Qian Shu could write one character in 50 years with great perfection and great perfection, so how could there only be 8 characters in the spring and autumn scroll? It took 50 years to write one character, so 8 characters only took 400 years. However, how could the spring and autumn scroll be passed down for 400 years, 4,000 years, or even 40,000 years? The reason why there were only 8 luck characters in the spring and autumn scroll for so many years was simple. After every luck character was written, it would become difficult to write a second one. It was as if there was something in the dark that made it harder to write more characters. He had already written 3 of the Qian Shu, and he couldn't write the 4th one no matter what. In the past, Luin couldn't understand it. He had thought about what luck brought to the spring and autumn scroll, and how a person's luck was related to karma. Now, he seemed to understand a little. If there was the river of time, the great Tao of karma, and the great Tao of consciousness, then there should also be the great Tao of luck. Of course, these great Taos were just Liu Yin's own guesses, and no one could prove it for him. Writing the luck character was touching the great Tao of luck. It was fine to touch it once or twice, but the more you touched it, the harder it would be. There was a price to pay for touching the great Tao of luck, and this price was even greater than the benefits of luck itself. For example, the Spring and Autumn Scroll had used luck to win over Ming Xiaoqiu and wanted to replace Myriad Elephant Valley, but in the end, it attracted Liu Yin and caused the entire Spring and Autumn Scroll to be destroyed. Was this luck good or bad? Could taking the initiative to grab luck bear a heavier price? This was also why Liu Yin didn't dare to use the word luck. On the other hand, he had borrowed Xiang Xiyu's luck many times, and he didn't know what was going on with her. Liu Yin had high hopes for her. She had gone from being a mortal to reaching the great circle of tribulation, and her journey had been smooth sailing. However, she couldn't find any tribulation. Her greatest worry was that once she found her tribulation, there was a high possibility that she would break through to the immortal realm. There were many such geniuses in human civilization, and they only lacked time. As he thought about it, Liu Yin rolled his die. He rolled it again and again, but he didn't see the ball of light even after rolling 6 pips. It wasn't until several months later that he finally saw the ball of light in the dark space. He rushed over and merged with it. The familiar roar of music seemed to shatter his entire body. Flesh and blood couldn't withstand it. This was a paradise for bones. The skeleton that merged with him this time was a wild beast when it was alive. It was a very fierce beast with a very large body. When Liu Yin merged with it, it was accompanying him. That's right, accompanying him. This fierce beast was a member of a band. There were 4 skeletons in the band, and one of them was a human. The memories of the last fusion and this beast's memories told Liu Yin that there were many human skeletons in this world. He didn't know whether these human skeletons belonged to the civilization that was destroyed by Lu Gu or the former 9 bases. Anyway, by transforming a life form into a skeleton, the creature was equivalent to eternal life. The skeleton was almost immortal under the power of death. The only way to die was for the power of death to completely dissipate, or for the skeleton itself to be broken and become worthless. Liu Yin's fusion made the accompanying music stop. The human skeleton next to him scolded, "Big head, why did you make a mistake? This can't go on. When can we enter the castle? Yes, you are the passion of our band. Don't make any more mistakes. It will affect the morale." Liu Yin was speechless. Continue. The music continued, and Liu Yin withdrew from the fusion. This beast's memories weren't as many as the one he had merged with before, and its strength wasn't as good. However, he couldn't help it. There were only so many balls of light he could see, and this beast's skeleton was the brightest. On the other side, Liu Yin opened his eyes and continued. Time continued to pass, and another year went by. During this time, Liu Yin had merged with creatures from the dead universe several times, but they were all ordinary skeletons that couldn't enter the castle at all. He decided to move in the direction of the dead universe again. The closer he got, the more balls of light he would see, and the brighter they would be. The roaring music caused the world to boil, and the castle began to play. All the skeletons stopped and looked up, each of them extremely pious, as if they were feeling the power of the music. Music my ass. I don't like music. Disgusting. This was what one of the skeletons that Liu Yin had merged with was thinking. More accurately, all the skeletons that he had merged with were thinking the same thing. They had all cultivated for so many years, and who cared about music? There were creatures that cared, but they would only listen to a little song or watch a little dance. Who would sing for themselves? Who would have thought that music was the king here? Damn it. Although this was what they thought, none of them dared to express it. Legudijin loved music, and if they wanted to gain the appreciation of this abyss of the dead universe, the path of music was the fastest. Legend had it that one of the members of Laguda Jin's band was only an explorer, but he had been recognized for his great musical achievements. Laguda Jin had personally helped him increase his strength, forcibly pushing him to the limit below immortality. There were many such examples. On the other hand, there was an immortal who wasn't welcomed and couldn't even enter the castle because they didn't know how to play music. How could such a thing happen in other civilizations? However, it had happened here. Only music could not be let down. This was Laguda Jin's persistence. Chapter 44-36. When the song ended, countless skeletons cheered as if they had understood the song. Luin also pretended to cheer, raising his arm higher than anyone else's, even though the song was unpleasant to the ears. This friend seems to know a lot. How about we have an exchange? A fish bone in the river behind spoke to Luin. Luin looked over. I don't know, but I think it sounds good. Is it instinctively good? That's fine, why don't we form a band? A fish like you wants to form a band. Fish have dreams too. Go play somewhere else. Luin withdrew from the fusion, feeling somewhat distressed. Why did he always end up with such weak skeletons? Couldn't there be a powerful one that he could enter the castle to take a look? He shook his head helplessly and continued. Another half a year passed, and this time, Luin saw a very bright ball of light that was brighter than any he had fused with before. He became excited and rushed over to fuse with it. After a year of fusion, Luin had finally understood that the brightness of a ball of light did not depend on the strength of the creature that fused with it, but rather on how much deathly stillness it had. The more deathly stillness it had, the brighter the ball of light would be. He had never considered this before because he had also used astral sources to roll the die. When he used his consciousness to roll the die, the creatures he fused with had cultivated themselves, astral sources, and their consciousness represented their strength. However, the skeletons of the death universe were different. Their deathly stillness was not something they had cultivated, but was instead bestowed upon them. This was why Luin dared to fuse with even an eternal being that matched two universal laws without fear of being discovered. This was because the deathly stillness was bestowed upon him, and he would only be discovered if he fused with Laguda Jin's body. However, the amount of deathly stillness could be considered a reference. The stronger the creature, the more deathly stillness it would be bestowed upon it. Judging from the brightness of this ball of light, Luin was certain that it was an eternal being. He was excited. He could finally enter the castle and take a look. He could finally know the strength of Laguda Jin's subordinates, and he should be able to understand more about the death universe. His consciousness fused with the ball of light, and when he opened his eyes, he saw a familiar fish bone. Wasn't this the fish he had seen half a year ago? This was the riverside, and the fish bone was pacing back and forth. When Luin looked at it, it fawned. Boss Joe, have you thought about it? Let's form a band. My musical talent is definitely good, and I can definitely enter the castle. Luin looked at the fish in silence. What a coincidence. Memories continued to pour in, and he understood the identity of the creature that had fused with him. Zhou was an eternal being, and one who had broken through on his own. His strength was not bad, but his luck was too bad. He had encountered Laguda Jin, who had bestowed him with life. His flesh and blood had been torn apart, betraying his former self and obtaining a new life. Moreover, this Zhou was one of the few powerful enemies that Laguda Jin had to deal with personally. He was equivalent to having a peak strength that was compatible with the laws of the universe. Luin kept recalling the battle between Zhou and Laguda Jin, and he realized that Laguda Jin had only used one move to heavily injure Zhou. That move was called Annihilation of Heaven and Earth. One move, Annihilation of Heaven and Earth, had beaten Jiang Zhou to the point where he couldn't even fight back. Then, it was bone language. With a total of 2 moves, Jiang Zhou was defeated by a creature that had reached the pinnacle of the laws of the universe. Lu Yin continued to search through his memories, as the memories of these creatures were quite valuable. Disregarding everything else, its comprehension of eternal life was extraordinary. But then, Lu Yin felt that something was amiss. He felt the world spinning around him as if the entire universe was being torn apart. The feeling of being possessed. Not good. Every creature had a different comprehension of the universe. Lu Yin hadn't even reached the eternal life realm, but he was still trying to pry into someone else's comprehension of breaking through. Zhou's comprehension had suppressed his own, causing him to go berserk. Lu Yin hurriedly stopped looking through Zhou's memories. He couldn't do that. This kind of shortcut wouldn't work. After all, someone else's comprehension was still someone else's. Everyone and every creature had different experiences. Forcefully transferring someone else's comprehension to oneself would only conflict with one's own comprehension and ultimately fail. Lu Yin sighed. He was overthinking things. If it was so easy to succeed, then he could focus on cultivating various powers in the future and use his dai to fuse with other eternal life forms. He would definitely be compatible with a few or even a dozen laws. Wouldn't he be invincible then? How about it? Boss Zhou, think about it. I'm the most suitable, Yu Gu spoke up again, eager to enter the castle. Lu Yin glanced at Gu Yu. He had purposely searched for Zhou's memories of the castle, but there were almost none. It was just an instinctive desire, as if the castle was the center of this world. It was just like how people instinctively relied on enjoying life rather than pursuing a life of suffering. Although there were no memories of the castle, Lu Yin also understood this world. This place was called Joy City, and it was a turbid treasure. That's right, the entire world was a turbid treasure called building blocks. The so-called building blocks were pieces of wood that were similar to toys, but they were turbid treasures that could change shape and color at will. Thus, during the previous battle, all the skeletons under their feet had become transparent. This was the function of the turbid treasure. I don't know music, Lu Yin spoke up after fusing with Zhou's body. Yu Gu saw that Zhou was paying attention to it and became excited. Boss Zhou, you're finally willing to talk to me. That's great. Don't worry, I'm good at music. You don't need to know it. You just need to join a band. A band? Lu Yin continued searching through his memories. In a world where there was no music or strength, why did he have to look for Zhou? He quickly found the answer. The music in this world was different from the music that ordinary people knew. Music here required musical talent, but there was also rough music. Some life forms used their own bodies to create music, bringing about the carefree feeling of the jungle where the strong preyed on the weak. He also entered the castle. Could it be that Yu Gu had also taken this path? It didn't seem like it. With such a small body, it would shatter with a single roar. It wasn't easy to fuse into the body of a stronger fellow, so Lu Yin had no interest in dealing with Yu Gu. He raised his hand, grabbed Yu Gu, and threw it away. He continued to search through his memories. Not long after, he withdrew from the fusion. It wasn't a voluntary withdrawal, but because the power of death had been exhausted. This Zhou was the one who had fused with the longest life form in the death universe. Unfortunately, he didn't know much about the death universe. Lu Yin spent most of his time watching the battle between Yu Gu and Lu Ku Jin, especially that move, Heaven and Earth Annihilation. He always felt that it was very mysterious, so mysterious that Zhou didn't even know how he lost. That move seemed simple, but the more he looked at it, the stranger it became. It was as if there were countless moves, but also as if all the moves would merge into one. Heaven and Earth Annihilation gave Lu Yin a thirst for battle techniques. He really wanted to learn this move. In the starry sky, Luin raised his hand and imitated heaven and earth annihilation, but there was no move or spirit. Let's continue rolling the die. I don't believe that I can't enter the castle. Every time he rolled the die, he would occasionally fuse with death. None of the life forms in the universe could enter the castle. After a while, Luin had some guesses. Could it be that the castle blocked the die's enhance? It wasn't impossible. The die's enhance had failed before, and the eternal seal could injure him through the dark space of his consciousness. Although it was mysterious, it didn't mean that it was invincible. Turbid treasures were mysterious in themselves, and every one of them had a different use. After the die's enhance was broken, it would become more normal as he came into contact with more powerhouses. If that was really the case, then there was only one way to enter the castle. A band. The first thing he thought of was Yugu. Forget it, there was no rush. Let's determine the exact location of Joy City first. He looked into the distance and teleported. It was impossible to determine the location inside Joy City. How could the skeletons inside know where he was? He could only see from the outside with the mirroring technique. The mirroring technique allowed him to see the speed and distance of a 50-year eternal life realm expert. Luku Jin was very strong, and his attack range should be about the same as Red Hero's, reaching the speed of a 100-year eternal life realm expert. However, that was just the attack range. It didn't represent the distance that could be seen or sensed at any time. 50-year speed. This distance was considered safe as long as he was prepared and restrained his aura. He teleported again and again, and every time he did so, he would stop and use the mirroring technique to look into the distance. He wasn't sure if Joy City was in this direction, so he could only rely on luck. He had thought of bringing Xiang Xiu along and borrowing her luck. But no matter how lucky she was, she couldn't control the death universe. They weren't on the same level. In the past, he had thought that luck had nothing to do with power, but now that he knew that luck might have some sort of Tao behind it, it might not be unrelated to power. Furthermore, this was a distance of inches. Time had a main stream and a tributary, so did luck have a main stream and a secondary stream? With that thought in mind, he continued to teleport and search. 3 years later, just as Luin was about to teleport away, he suddenly looked in a certain direction. Using the mirroring technique, he saw that it was the civilization that had been destroyed. That's right, it was that civilization. Luin stared in a certain direction outside that civilization. There, an eternal life realm expert had been pierced by his own skeletons amidst the music. Countless skeletons tore through his flesh and crawled into Joy City. He had found this location, which meant that Joy City wasn't too far away. He remembered that after the war had ended, Joy City had headed in this direction. Luin looked into the distance. He had found it with the mirroring technique. Joy City was only a few years away from this universe's eternal life realm expert. Fortunately, he hadn't teleported directly outside this universe, or he would have been too close to Joy City. He looked in the direction that Joy City was moving and confirmed its location. This place was about 1,300 years away from the 3 universes, which wasn't too far away. But without a clear target, it would be very difficult for Joy City to discover the 3 universes. Even a distance of 300 years would be difficult to discover, let alone 1,300 years. The Understar Red Coat universe was only 300 years away from the 3 universes. The 7 Treasures Heavenly Toad clan was even closer, it was only 50 years away. Luin watched as Joy City moved. It was moving in the direction that Ro Yujo's clone had appeared in. It was searching for Ro Yujo's clone. Ro Yujo's clone was related to Lagu's withered bone, and he had seen it when he had checked with Karma. If his guess was correct, then the 3 black scales that the Eternal Life Realm expert who had devoured the universe might be in Joy City. Chapter 44-37. Although the location of the soft universe's avatar was some distance away from the three universes, it was much closer than this location. If Luqing went there, there was a chance that he would encounter the three universes. Lu Yin pondered for a moment and suddenly looked in another direction. That was the Divine Realm's fishing civilization. It seemed that it was closer to Luqing. He teleported and disappeared to scout ahead. It would be great if he had the star map of the core distance. He could use teleportation to scout ahead, but other creatures did not. How could they scout ahead? Dream on. It was a great fortune to have been able to teleport back then. After some time, Lu Yin saw the Divine Realm's fishing civilization. He used mirroring to look at it and found that it was 50 years away. The coordinates of this civilization were obtained through an unknown method, but the coordinates were calculated with the three universes as the center. The location of the civilization that Luqing had destroyed could not be accurately corresponded to, so he had to scout ahead. Now, Lu Yin had roughly calculated it. Luqing was about 1,300 years away from the three universes, and it was only 800 years away from the Divine Realm's fishing civilization. It was closer to the Divine Realm's fishing civilization. Especially since it was moving diagonally to the Divine Realm's fishing civilization, this meant that it would be close to the Divine Realm's fishing civilization after some time. Lu Yin calculated and teleported to find a suitable location. He wanted to lure Luqing to the Divine Realm's fishing civilization. Previously, using the Divine Realm's fishing civilization to lure the technological civilization had failed. That was because the technological civilization had identified the three universes and was eyeing the humans. He hoped that he would succeed this time. Standing in the starry sky, Lu Yin released the starry sky in his heart. The deathly still planet rotated, and he raised his arm. Absolute darkness surged out of the deathly still as he stared in one direction and slashed. The power of the deathly still turned into a streak of darkness that slashed into the distance. At this moment, the deathly still power came from the direction of the Divine Realm's fishing civilization. With Lu Yin's strength, this slash could dissipate after more than 10 years. Of course, it did not mean that this slash would last for more than 10 years, but it was just a distance. 10 years was already within Luqing's 50-year range. He did not know if Legoku could sense this distance, but as long as he sensed it, he would find the deathly still power that he had left behind in the direction of the Divine Realm's fishing civilization. There was a possibility that it would lead him to the Divine Realm. Anyway, Lu Yin had observed Luqing several times, but he was always around the 50-year eternal life realm. Since Luqing did not notice him, then he would use his slash to attack within this range. Now, it all depended on how big of an attack Legoku could detect. After unleashing this attack, Lu Yin immediately teleported back to the three universes. Once Legoku sensed Deathly Silence's attack, the range of his senses would definitely increase, and Lu Yin did not want to be discovered. When he returned to the three universes, he immediately ordered to find people who were very accomplished in music and bring them to the Mirage domain to learn music. This order left countless people dumbfounded. Study music. In the back mountain of Sky Sect, Longshi poured a cup of tea for Lu Yin and looked at him strangely. Lu Yin coughed, "Don't look at me like that, it's just a hobby." "You're not in seclusion anymore?" Longshi asked, blinking. Lu Yin replied, "For now." Longshi did not ask further and left. Not long after, Mr. Mu arrived. As soon as he arrived, he took out a wooden flute and twirled it around, looking very carefree. "You want to learn music?" Lu Yin looked at Mu Xiao. "Yes. Master can't teach you much, but this wooden flute is quite good. Listen to Master's song, the flute. Leave and forget the rest of your life." The sound of the flute was very pleasant and suited Lu Yin's taste. He liked it, but it did not suit Luqing's taste. He needed something more explosive, preferably one that had a sense of power, passion, and killing intent. It was something that could make people cheer. As for the flute, it was useless for him to like it. However, he could not crush Mr. Mu's confidence. It had been a long time since he had seen Mr. Mu so confident in teaching him. Master, go to the Mirage domain to learn. All right, if you like, Master will teach you. Thank you, Master. When he saw Mr. Mu enter the Mirage domain, Lu Yin quickly contacted Long Shi and asked her to find a group of people who could meet his requirements. Long Shi smiled faintly and watched Lu Yin helplessly enter the Mirage domain. Her long blue hair fluttered in the wind, looking very beautiful. In the Mirage domain, Lu Yin first learned the wooden flute from Mr. Mu. Mr. Mu had an overwhelming advantage in this aspect, while Lu Yin did not have much talent. At least, compared to Mr. Mu's talent in cultivation, Lu Yin was much weaker. This allowed Mr. Mu to experience the confidence of a master. After obtaining Mr. Mu's approval and learning the wooden flute with great difficulty, Lu Yin began to learn from the music masters that Long Shi had found. Lu Yin could not stand this kind of music. After all, he had cultivated for thousands of years, and his mind was calm. However, there was no other way. This music would definitely be useful in the future, so he could only learn it. Actually, experiencing different kinds of music was also a part of life. Just because it was not suitable did not mean that it was not good. Some kinds of music gave people a sense of strength. After leaving the Mirage domain, another half a year passed. Lu Yin teleported to Lu City, but he found that it was still moving along the predetermined path. He did not know if his deathly silence attack had failed or something else, so he just treated it as a failure and continued. Following that, he tried again and again. The angle, the strength, the time, and so on. He struck out with the power of deathly silence again and again. During this time, he also fused with Lu City's skeleton, but the skeleton outside the castle could not detect what was going on inside the castle. No one knew what was going on with Lu Gudajin. Finally, one day, 5 years later, Lu Yin fused with Lu City's skeleton and discovered that Lu City had changed directions. Its target was the fishing civilization in the divine realm. He had succeeded. The power of deathly silence had attracted Lu Gudajin's attention, causing Lu City to change directions. The goal of a technological civilization was the 3 universes, so it was not easy to change directions. However, Lu City was different. It indeed wanted to find the soft universe's clone, but compared to the powerful deathly silence outside, it was more important. This was also why Lu Yin had tried again and again. He did not believe that the dead universe would give up on the deathly silence from the outside world. No matter where this deathly silence came from, they should figure it out. The skeleton's memories did not explain why Lu City had changed directions, but rumors had spread outside the castle that Lu Gudajin had walked out of Lu City once before changing directions. The reason had not been revealed. Lu Yin listened to the rumors around him and looked up at the sky, hoping that the fishing civilization in the divine realm would have a battle with the dead universe. No matter who won, it would be beneficial to him. The fishing civilization in the divine realm had already reached the speed of an eternal realm cultivator in the 3 universes. If they took another step forward, they would be close to the human civilization. This was not something that Lu Yin wanted to see. Other than the human civilization itself, most of the other civilizations were their enemies. This was definitely not a bad idea. Friend, do you want to form a band? I'm very talented in music. Lu Yin, who had fused with the skeleton, turned around and saw the fish skeleton in the nearby river. It's that thing again. This guy was really persistent. Wait, this place was far from that place. Zhou's position was very far away. It could be said that it wasn't a river at all. Joy City's area was very large, enough to bury countless stars. How did it come here? Why are you here? Have we met before? You invited me. The fish skeleton swung its tail and splashed the water. Fate, friend. No, brother. This is fate. Do you want to form a band? I can tell that you're talented in music. Luin was puzzled. I saw you invite Boss Show. Did it agree? The fish skeleton was helpless. Not yet, but it will agree soon. Boss Show has already spoken to me. Boss Show is so far away from here. How did you get here? I swam here. Luin was speechless. The fish skeleton said, I'm familiar with every river in the city, including the sewers. Let me tell you a secret. I can even enter the castle. Luin was shocked. You can enter the castle. The fish skeleton was proud. Of course. Are you serious? I don't believe you. What's there to not believe? You just have to enter the castle. The sewers are also a path. Seeing that Luin did not speak, the fish skeleton said, You still don't believe me? I'll bring you to see. Can I go too? You're not big. You can. Luin looked at his body. The skeleton that he had merged with was indeed not big. It was very petite and was a reptile. Speaking of which, this fish skeleton was not picky at all in order to invite others to form a band. With a plop, Luin jumped into the river. Hold on to me. I'll bring you to see. Luin grabbed the fish skeleton and shuttled through the river, heading in an unknown direction. Why was he getting further and further away from the castle? The river was crisscrossing and there were countless forks in the river bottom. This turbid treasure had indeed become a world of its own. There were even sewers. After turning here and there, he did not know how many bends he had taken. When he reappeared, he was already in a dark underground sewer. Brother, this is the castle. Don't make any noise. We'll just listen, the fish skeleton reminded in a low voice. Luin looked up. Above him was something like a manhole cover. He could not understand why there was a sewer when there was clearly a bunch of skeletons and there was no sewage. But he soon understood. The booming music reverberated in the sewers. How was this a sewer? It was clearly a loudspeaker. Luin stared at the fish skeleton. Of course, the skeleton's eyes did not reveal such an expression. This is not a sewer. The fish skeleton said, it's similar to a sewer, but there's an additional function of amplification. This is the channel that amplifies the sound of the entire castle. It's equivalent to a line. It's fine. Other than the sound being a little loud, there's nothing else. Isn't this a little loud? Just as Luin was about to speak, there was a boom. The music exploded and almost broke the skull that he had merged with. At the same time, his heart sank to the bottom. He had heard this rhythm outside the castle. It was just the most gentle rhythm of the explosive music, but this sound almost shattered him. What about the high-pitched music? Just as he thought of this, there was an explosion. The skeleton shattered and scattered in the sewer. The moment the skeleton that Luin had merged with shattered, a dissatisfied voice came from the castle. There's noise. It's not tuned properly. Play again. In the sewer, the fish skeleton helplessly shook its tail. Brother, look. I brought you here, but you don't have the fate to enjoy the castle's music up close. Forget it, I'll continue to invite Boss Show. With that, it swam out of the sewer. Chapter 44-38. In outer space, Luin suddenly opened his eyes and exhaled. The bones he had fused with also made him feel like he was on the brink of death. This feeling was the key to comprehending the arcane art of life and death, and it was through this that he had completed the death god transformation. This was the true feeling of death. In outer space, the death energy in his heart trembled. That fishbone had not told him in advance about the sewers. The destructive power of the sound was something that even a creature at the bitter adversity level would not be able to withstand, let alone a skeleton that had fused with it. The fact that the fishbone could withstand it meant that it was not weak. It was no wonder that it had dared to disturb Zhou time and time again. Zhou was an eternal that had reached the pinnacle of the universe's laws, and no one would dare approach him without some strength. However, the fishbone had not lied to him. It had indeed entered the castle, and as long as one could withstand the sound pressure, they would be able to travel underground and gather as much information as possible. Lu City was already heading towards the fishing god realm, but it would take a few hundred years for the two to meet. Lu Yin would not wait for nothing. He continued to roll his die, but this time, his goal had changed. He wanted to find the fishbone and go to the sewers. 3 months later, Lu Yin fused with a skeleton and began to search for the fishbone. However, Lu City was too large and there were too many rivers to count. It was not easy to find the bones, so he changed his mind and looked for Zhou. The fishbone would not give up on Zhou. However, Lu Yin stopped and withdrew from the fusion. The skeleton that he had fused with was not very strong, and it would not be able to withstand the sound pressure of the sewers. It would only be useful if he fused with a decent expert. He continued to roll. Time passed, and 3 years passed in the blink of an eye. Lu Yin looked around and then at the skeleton's body. It was pretty strong, and it had definitely been at the peak of the bitter adversity level when it was alive. This skeleton was so strong that it would definitely be able to withstand the sound pressure of the sewers. Furthermore, this place was not too far from Zhou. Lu Yin determined the direction and headed towards Zhou's location. He had fused with many skeletons and was very familiar with the area outside the castle. It did not take long for him to find Zhou. Zhou's location was not hidden, and from time to time, there would be skeletons watching from afar. These skeletons had never seen an eternal before and were curious about what it was like. Zhou sat there silently and did not interact with any other creatures. It did not seem to be planning on going to the castle. However, Lu Yin had merged with its body before and knew that it wanted to enter the castle as well. That was the place that every skeleton that had been given life by Lu Ku yearned for. Lu Yin didn't want to wait any longer. He walked to the side of the river, raised his hand, and slammed it down. Bang! The huge impact caused the river to split, and many fish bones were swept up. He took a look and found that the fish bones were all about the same, so there shouldn't be that one. Thinking about it, he walked to the next river and smacked it down. Bang! 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 Many of the skeletons looked over, not understanding what Lu Yin was doing. However, they didn't dare to interfere as they weren't strong enough to do so, and they didn't need to either. Occasionally, the white bones in the river would resist, but they would be pushed away. With a bang, the river split apart, and a fishbone jumped up. "Brother, what's the meaning of this? Did we offend you?" Lu Yin stared at the fishbone. "Where's my brother?" Yugu was confused. "Your brother?" Lu Yin said in a low voice, "The one who followed you into the castle through the sewers is my brother." Yugu was surprised. "That's your brother?" "Yes." What a coincidence. Your brother is in the castle." "Castle?" "Yes, wait, I only told your brother that you could enter the city through the sewers." "Fort, how did you know?" Lu Yin raised his head. "My clan has a talent. I know everything it knows." Yugu didn't believe him. "Then why are you asking me? You don't know how your brother is." Lu Yin shook his head. "I can't sense the situation in the castle." Yugu sighed in relief. "Then, your brother is enjoying himself in the castle. Do you want to go?" "Really, in the castle? Don't you know?" Lu Yin nodded. Okay, I want to go too. Lead the way. Okay. Yugu jumped up. Hold on tight. Luin jumped into the water and grabbed Yugu. A familiar scene appeared. Yugu took him through many turns and finally entered the castle through the sewers. He realized that Yugu picked a time to bring creatures into the castle. They had to wait for the music to stop, or they would take a detour until the music stopped. This was to prevent others from discovering that the sewers were actually loudspeakers. But what was the point of doing so? Luin didn't understand, and he didn't need to understand. He just followed. Soon, they arrived at the manhole cover. Where's my brother? Luin asked. Yugu said, he'll be here soon. Don't worry. The sound pressure was coming soon. Luin wasn't in a hurry and waited quietly. Not long after, the roaring sound pressure arrived. Yugu stared at Luin, who was as steady as a mountain. No way, this guy was so strong. Yugu was puzzled and circled around Luin. Luin asked again, where's my brother? He'll be here soon. Don't worry. What is this place? The castle's loudspeakers can let the whole Joy City hear the music. How is it? Isn't it wonderful? Lu Yin's voice turned cold. My brother can't withstand the music just now. Is he dead? Is he dead? Yugu hurriedly said, don't blame me. I told them in advance, but your brother insisted on coming in. I couldn't do anything. Luin suddenly reached out to grab Yugu. Then why did you lure me in? You want to kill me? Yugu hurriedly retreated. Brother, don't be rash. This is the castle. We can't kill each other. Luin still reached for Yugu. Yugu was very slippery and disappeared in a flash. This was the effect that Luin wanted. If Yugu ran away, he would be able to enter the castle. With this in mind, he approached the manhole cover. At the same time, a dissatisfied voice came from the castle. Why is there still noise? Didn't you clean it up last time? Maybe it wasn't cleaned up. I'll clean it up again. No need, I'll do it myself. Luin kept approaching the manhole cover. As long as he crossed it, he would be able to enter the castle. If he wanted to understand the death universe, he had to understand Loku's withering. It was one of the abysses of the death universe, and to understand Loku's withering, he had to enter the castle. He was getting closer. Just as Luin was about to touch the manhole cover, the entire sewer shook. Then, as if it was being lifted up, water kept rushing towards the manhole cover. Luin stopped under the manhole cover and looked over. Through the manhole cover, he saw an eye. An eye wearing sunglasses was looking through the manhole cover. The eye was bigger than the entire sewer. The sewer was obviously very big, at least a few meters in diameter, but at this moment, it seemed to have shrunk many times. Even Yugu, who had merged with Yugu, was like an ant in front of a giant's eye. Sure enough, there are impurities. A voice sounded. The eye wearing sunglasses retreated, and the skeleton's mouth came close and blew a breath. The bone that Luin had merged with had the power of a complete Ku adept, and its defensive abilities were extremely strong. However, at this moment, it was blown to ashes and disappeared in an instant. In the starry sky, Luin suddenly opened his eyes and looked into the distance with lingering fear. That breath contained an extremely terrifying pressure. Even an ordinary eternal life realm cultivator would be crushed, let alone a cultivator at the peak of the bitter disaster realm. This was Loku's withering. Luin had personally experienced the pressure. The pressure that Loku's withering gave him was no less than that of Red Hero at his peak. He had experienced death again. However, he had not noticed how the sewer had shrunk. Was there something wrong with the castle? Was it the power of the turbid treasure? Unfortunately, he did not discover anything. That fish bone should be fine. It had long since escaped and was very slippery. He wanted to continue rolling the die, but after thinking about it, he decided to stop for the time being. He had let the fish bone take him to the sewer twice in a row. If he continued, he might be discovered. It was better to wait for a while. There were still a few hundred years before Lost City and the Divine Realm would meet, so Luin decided to enter Xiong City. The sooner he could control it and protect the three universes, the sooner he could feel at ease. But how would Yu Che make his move? Part of the reason he had kept the unknown 6-star mission reward was to deal with Yu Che. Only by seeing through Yu Che's methods could he find a way to deal with him. However, he could not see clearly at the moment. Where was Dongshu Mountain? Luin entered Xiong City again. No matter what Yu Che's methods were, he had to find a way to control Xiong City before dealing with Yu Che. This method could also be used as bait. However, he had not found anything yet. Fortunately, he could cultivate his willpower here, so he did not waste any time. He would continue using his willpower. Not long after, Luin turned into a bird and circled around before landing on a tree. He looked down at the grandfather and grandson who were enjoying the shade beneath the tree. The smiles on their faces were so pure that it made one yearn for them. Woof! Woof! The puppy ran out while the child chased after it under the tree. The grandfather laughed heartily. Lu Yin's gaze followed the child out of the courtyard. This was a secluded path that was some distance away from the main street. There was no one around, so there was no need to worry. Don't run, little Huang, don't run, little Huang. The child chased after the puppy until he bumped into someone at the corner of the street. The child fell down, his eyes red as he rubbed his forehead in pain. Woof, woof. Little Huang barked from the side, staring warily at the person who had bumped into the child. That person was rubbing his thigh, which was also in pain. The grandfather hurried out to take a look. Luin stared blankly at the person rubbing his thigh. Tuolin. Around the corner, the grandfather ran over. I'm sorry, sir. I'm really sorry. The child is too naughty. I'm sorry. Tuolin rubbed his thigh. It's fine, Grandpa. Check if the child is all right. The child hugged his grandfather's thigh and shrank back in fear. The grandfather hurriedly said, Thank you, sir. The child is fine. I'm sorry, sir. Please come in and have some tea. It was just a polite remark, but Tuolin was truly thirsty. His eyes lit up, really. Thank you. The grandfather was stunned, but then he smiled, really, please come in. Tuolin followed his grandfather into the courtyard and chatted happily with the grandfather and grandson right under Lu Yin's nose. There was a stray cat sitting on Tuolin's shoulder. There was also a seedling stuck on its back, which was very strange. Lu Yin looked down. Why was Tuolin a human? So many people had entered Xiong City, but none of them had turned into a human. Why was Tuolin able to do it? The college entrance exam is over. Add a chapter. I wish the brothers who participated in the exam the best. Chapter 44-39. Big brother, can I touch that cat? The child was curious. Below his feet, Goldie was still on guard, but not towards Tuolin. Instead, it was towards the cat, which was too fierce and not to be trifled with. The grandfather scolded, Move aside, don't cause trouble. Tuolin smiled, Of course. He then handed the cat to the child and muttered, This cat is very gentle and won't hurt the child, right, kitty? The child was a little scared, but he wanted to touch it even more. The cat rolled its eyes. The grandfather didn't see it, but the child did. He was even more surprised at how cute the cat was. Lu Yin was speechless. This was a human, and he didn't know who had transformed into it. That seedling was probably Yan Ryu. This combination was strange no matter how he looked at it. The courtyard became lively as Tuolin and his grandfather chatted enthusiastically. They were very curious about Xiang City, and the cat leaped onto the wall to prevent the child from touching it. Goldie circled around it, trying to prevent the child from approaching the cat. It instinctively felt that the cat was dangerous, but the child ignored it and wanted to touch it. It was very happy. A breeze blew, and the seedlings swayed in harmony. Lu Yin looked at this scene and listened to the conversation below. He suddenly felt that something was wrong. He seemed to have overlooked something all this time, but what exactly had he overlooked? Lu Yin stared down. Tuolin and his grandfather were chatting happily, and they talked about reading. His grandfather returned to the room and took out a book for Tuolin to read. Tuolin acted as if he had received a treasure and immediately started reading. Lu Yin's eyes flashed as he realized that this pair didn't seem to know much about Xiang City. That wasn't right. Why wouldn't they know? Xiang City was huge, but the people who lived here had spent their entire lives in this city. A lifetime was enough to understand a lot about Xiang City, not to mention the generations before them. Hundreds of generations had lived in Xiang City. In theory, every family should know Xiang City like the back of their hand, but this pair only knew the surroundings. Recalling the people he had learned about through the power of will, everything seemed normal. They were living, talking, quarreling, trading, living the most ordinary day of mortals. Occasionally, there would be some schemes, but in the end, it was all a normal mortal's life. But now that he thought about it, it seemed that those people only moved within a certain range. It was only because they were too normal that Lu Yin hadn't thought of anything else. It was normal for an ordinary person to live in a village for the rest of their lives. Moreover, Xiang City was so big that a corner of it was equivalent to a small city. It did not attract his attention if an ordinary person did not leave their area. However, everyone who had been checked by the power of will did not leave their area. This was a problem. They were clearly normal people, so why was this happening? Kitty, kitty, kitty. The child shouted. The cat leapt up the tree and saw Lu Yin. A smug smile appeared on her face as she rushed forward, clawing at Lu Yin in an attempt to knock him down. Go play with that kid. He had long noticed that there was something wrong with this bird. It had been staring down, so it was definitely a human. Most of the foreign creatures had run away because of the previous riot. This guy was definitely a human. I want you to keep an eye on it. Lu Yin was indifferent as he swept out with his willpower. The cat fell off the tree and landed in the child's arms. The cat was stunned. What was going on? What happened? That bird didn't move, so how did he fall down? Did he slip? It wanted to run away, but the child hugged it tightly and laughed happily. Goldie barked even louder. This caused grandfather and Tuolin to burst into a fit of anger laughing. Lu Yin spread his wings and left Xiang City. A few days later, Tuolin walked out of Xiang City, Huican and Yan Ryu with him. They saw Lu Yin as soon as they left Xiang City and hurriedly bowed. Greetings, master. Greetings, master. Lu Yin grunted and looked at them. You've entered Xiang City as well. How do you feel? Tuolin was excited. Master, Xiang City is great. Everyone here is so friendly. Lu Yin looked at Yan Ryu, who respectfully said, Xiaoyu feels that Xiang City is very beautiful, but also very ordinary. Finally, Lu Yin looked at Huican, who grinned. This is quite good. That stray cat was Huican, Lu Yin could tell. Tuolin, you're inside. Are you human? Tuolin nodded excitedly. Yes, I'm human. Master, you must be human too. These words sounded awkward, as if he was scolding someone. Huiken glanced at Luin. Human? Of course not. Aside from Tuolin, no one else had turned into a human in Xiang City. They just didn't know what their master had turned into since no one had told them. Luin coughed. Tuolin, do me a favor. Tuolin was excited. Master, please tell me. I'll do my best to complete it. He then looked to the side. Xiaoyu, master finally needs me. Yes, I'm happy too. Xiaoyu, let's work hard together. Huiken rolled his eyes. Luin looked at Xiang City. Help me communicate with everyone in Xiang City. Ask them if anyone is looking around the city. See what they're focused on, what they care about, what they're obsessed with, and what they want. Tuolin didn't understand, but he would do as Luin said. Yes, master. I'll communicate with everyone in Xiang City and ask them. Luin. He patted Tuolin's shoulder. He seemed to see something different in Xiang City. Perhaps this was an opportunity. Everyone's opportunities were different, and Tuolin's opportunity might be in Xiang City. What was the biggest difference between Tuolin and others? Lu Yin's first thought was reading. He'd read so many books that he'd become stupid. Could it be that he could become human because he read so much? Huiken, yes, master. Accompany your senior brother Tuolin and protect him. Huiken was speechless. He'd wanted to leave, but he couldn't run away from Lu Yin's orders. He could only nod, understood. Tuolin excitedly rushed into Xiang City. He decided that he wouldn't come out unless there was something important. There were many people in Xiang City, and it would take time to understand them. Huiken's heart sank. How long would that take? Luin watched them enter Xiang City again, and then he turned to go to the red shirt civilization. Tuolin's uniqueness meant that he didn't need to enter Xiang City for the time being. He could understand it through Tuolin later, but for now, he could build a mental wall. In the past, he'd built his mental wall in the 3 universes. This time, Luin wanted to go to the red shirt civilization and see if he could achieve a different mental state under the wrong path of the heartless path. On a path, there was a right way to walk, and there was also a wrong way to walk. Even if he was sure that the heartless path was wrong, there was still a group of people who hadn't been led astray by it. These people's perseverance was enough to improve his mental state. Right, Xiang Xiu. Luin went to the 9th heaven universe and decided to bring Xiang Xiu along. Xiang Xiu's luck couldn't affect a colossus like the Death universe, but if he brought her to the red shirt civilization, she might be lucky enough to find something. Ji Hao's tracks. He couldn't find Ji He, Rang Yu, and now there was the northern hero. Although the possibility of finding them with luck was very small, he could just treat it as finding someone to accompany him on a tour. Ask me out. Xiang Xiu looked at Luin strangely. Luin was speechless. Not asking, I'm borrowing your luck. Xiang Xiu's beautiful face showed some hesitation. Is there a problem? Luin asked. It's okay, it's fine. Xiang Xiu said, I'm just wondering if it'll be easier to cultivate with you. I've been stuck at the QAI level for so many years, and it's hard for me to take a step forward. Even if I used the universe's reboot to enter the eternal realm, I still couldn't do it. But you. She looked at Luin. Your progress is really fast. Luin shrugged. I haven't reached the eternal realm either. Xiang Xiu pursed her lips. But your combat power is still improving, and it's already beyond the limits of ordinary people's imagination. This was the truth, and Luin was very sure that he could still improve. He mainly relied on the green light. Without the green light, his physical strength couldn't increase, and there was a limit to his tolerance of other powers. The reason why realms existed was because there was a limit to power at each level. Only by breaking through this level could one transcend the limit. If there was no limit, how could realms exist? He was the only person in history who had reached such a level of combat power at this level. It was very special. Xiang Xiyu smiled. Master Lu, I've said before that you can use me whenever you want. There's no need to be polite. Let's go. Lu Yin felt that he couldn't keep up with Xiang Xiyu's words. Why was a girl speaking so awkwardly? He brought Xiang Xiyu to the red shirt civilization below the stars. A small boat, a pot of turbid wine, and a few plates of desserts floated down the river. The white side was filled with the world, and the black side was the opposite. He wanted to see what kind of changes the red shirt civilization would bring to his state of mind. Time continued to pass, and the red shirt civilization below the stars didn't disappoint Lu Yin. He experienced a different state of mind here compared to the three universes. Some people could hold on to their beliefs in the face of the general trend, while others would rather give up on cultivation than give up on their emotions. Some people were indifferent to life and death, waiting for Red Hero and Lu Yin to break up, waiting for the red shirt universe below the stars to collapse. Some people were extremely afraid of death and were frantically preparing for something. Everything in the world had a myriad of forms. Since they existed, there was a reason for their existence. Lu Yin took a sip of wine and smiled as he watched the cursing person leave. Xiang Xiyu found it strange. He's cursing you, and you're still smiling. Lu Yin said, cursing me means that you care about me. Remembering me is also a contribution to me. Xiang Xiyu was speechless. If breaking through makes me like you, I'd rather not break through. She paused and then said, can't you be like a normal person? Lu Yin asked, am I not normal? Xiang Xiyu sighed and rubbed her chin. Not at all. Lu Yin smiled faintly. You're lucky. You were born with everything, which is why it's difficult for you at this crucial step. Have you ever thought that all the misfortune in the first half of your life is concentrated at this final step? Xiang Xiyu rolled her eyes. I know, but what can I do? Lu Yin looked up. I'm sharing your good fortune, but it's also equivalent to bearing your misfortune. Xiang Xiyu blinked and looked at Lu Yin. Master Lu, I'm clearly the one helping you, but when you put it that way, I feel like you're helping me. Perhaps. I want to curse you too. Whatever. Scoundrel. Thank you. Xiang Xiyu rolled her eyes again and took a sip of wine. Chapter 4440. Every world had its own unique laws. The Tianyuan universe, Nina Firmament's universe, and spiritualized universes were all the same. Lu Yin understood the three universes too well, so he often met many people and knew what they would choose to do. His comprehension of his mental state was getting slower and slower, but it was different in the Red Coat universe. The path of ruthlessness here was an opportunity that he had always wanted to improve his mental state. The people, events, and objects here were all different from the three universes, and it was extremely helpful in building his mental state. 17 years passed in the blink of an eye. On this day, Lu Yin put down his cup and disappeared. Across from him, Xiang Xiyu also put down her cup and muttered to herself, he's gone again. Does breaking through really have to be like this? But Startle Gate Shangyu and Blood Tower Shangyu were clearly normal. I even talked to Ba Yongxing before, and he was also normal. Why did it change when it came to him? Some distance away, within a mountain, a huge space was filled with blood and violence. This was the home of a certain family in the Red Coat universe. This family enslaved cultivators to help them cultivate the path of ruthlessness, and it could be said that they were extremely ruthless. This family's ancestor had once followed the parallel order and yearned for the parallel order's method of extreme pain. That was how they had developed their current method. Lu Yin took a step forward, looked up, and slashed with his goal yen. "Who's there?" someone shouted as they charged at Lu Yin. These people were no different from ants in Lu Yin's eyes, and he could kill them with a single thought. However, he did not. Instead, he raised his goal yen and slashed out again and again, killing a person with each slash. Fresh blood dripped down the blade and dyed the ground red. More and more cultivators charged at him. Darkness surrounded Lu Yin's body. This was the dark side of the mental state wall, and outsiders could not see it. As he killed, the dark mental state wall piled up piece by piece, constantly catching up to the white mental state wall. At this moment, there was only good and evil in Lu Yin's eyes. The evil side continued to pile up on the wall. If it was someone else's evil, then he would use evil to control evil. In this universe, if one did not do evil, then they could only wait for death. The greatest flaw of human nature was being benevolent in the clouds. Countless creatures wanted to drag you down, but if benevolence could not change them, then the butcher's knife would. This might not have been a factor in Zhou Lian's defeat. Not long after, Lu Yin returned to the boat and calmly took a sip of wine. On the other side, Xiang Xiyu did not say a word. She was used to it. The boat floated down the river. Lu Yin looked at the shore and sighed. It's still the carefree life of a mortal. Xiang Xiyu rolled her eyes. They have their own troubles. Mortals envy us cultivators for being able to go anywhere, but they don't know how many life and death situations we have to go through. Lu Yin nodded. That's right. They envy us, and we envy them. In fact, we share the same goal. You're living well. Xiang Xiyu continued. Lu Yin looked at her. Stand tall. Benefits. What else? Many people don't look at benefits and live in seclusion in the mountains. Only such people can be at ease. Why did they live in seclusion? I've seen through it. How can I see through it? Xiang Xiyu choked. Lu Yin looked at the shore. You've reached the peak, seen through everything, and then retired into the mountains. This is karma, but where is the karma? How many people had he passed along the way? How many people would be dragged down? How many corpses had he stepped on? You want to end it with just a few words. Xiang Xiyu frowned. What do you mean? Lu Yin swirled his wine glass and smiled at her. What you gain in the underworld must be returned to the underworld. What you gain in the temple must be returned to the temple. This is karma. Xiang Xiyu was deep in thought. Karma. So this was karma. No one could escape from it. Karma was karma. Where there was karma, there was karma. What about her? Her good luck in the first half of her life had been exchanged for this final step. How can I repay this karma? Lu Yin was about to speak when his eyes narrowed and he stared at the shore. Xiang Xiyu looked at Lu Yin. Master Lu, can you tell me how I can repay this karma? Lu Yin put down his wine glass. Looks like I'll have to help you repay it. Xiang Xiyu didn't understand and followed his gaze. She saw an expressionless man walking by the shore. Everyone gave way to him. He had a murderous aura that struck fear in people. Xiang Xiyu looked at Lu Yin. Master Lu, you know him. Lu Yin chuckled, your luck isn't just for show. He then smiled at Xiang Xiyu. Let's make a deal. You can repay your own karma. Xiang Xiyu. They walked along the shore to the ferry. Many people were boarding boats. The expressionless man stepped on the river and walked straight to the other shore. Many people surrounded him and envied him. They confirmed that he was a cultivator who could do anything. He was immortal. Many people knelt on the ground and begged to be his disciple. The expressionless man walked to the other shore without a care until he was blocked by a small boat. He looked at Lu Yin and Xiang Xiyu on the boat with a gloomy expression. Luin looked at him. He hadn't expected to meet him here. Northern Hero, the original red hero designed by Air Mao, had suffered a huge blow on the day of the wedding. It had caused Red Hero to remember his hatred for Rongyu and break a part of his ruthless Tao. After Air Mao's death, Red Hero had returned and taken Northern Hero away. At that time, Luin had felt that it was a pity. Regardless of whether Northern Hero died or was taken away by Luin, he could still leave and continue to break through Red Hero's heartless Tao. However, Northern Hero could not be taken away by Red Hero. Once Red Hero took Northern Hero away, Northern Hero would become a vessel for Northern Hero's heartless Tao, which would make up for the portion of Northern Hero's heartless Tao that had been broken because of Northern Hero's forgiveness. But Northern Hero had already been taken away by Red Hero, and Luin couldn't find him. Fortunately, Northern Hero had to break through to the immortal realm to become a vessel for the ruthless Tao. It was a long process, and Luin only had to deal with Red Hero before then. But he hadn't expected to meet Northern Hero here. Northern Hero had to be cultivating, and Red Hero couldn't be tied to him. Northern Hero had to travel the Red Hero's universe and grow step by step. Otherwise, even with Red Hero's help, it would be difficult for him to break through to the immortal realm. It was such a coincidence that Luin met Northern Hero while he was cultivating. Northern Hero looked at Luin. "Do we know each other?" Luin's lips curled up. "Of course. Where is it?" Just as Luin was about to speak, Northern Hero suddenly disappeared, and Red Hero appeared in his place. His monstrous aura stunned the mortals on the shore and caused the river to boil. Luin waved his hand, and the aura dissipated. Otherwise, Xiang Xiyu wouldn't have been able to withstand it. The river gradually calmed down, and Red Hero stood on top of it with his hands clasped behind his back. He looked calm, but his tightly clenched fists betrayed his inner thoughts. Luin, on the other hand, was calm, and even a little surprised. "How did you find him?" Red Hero asked, staring at Luin. His voice was terrifyingly low. Luin smiled. "Should I report to you?" Red Hero's eyes widened, and the water droplets beside him flowed backward into the sky. Xiang Xiyu's face paled. Xiang Xiyu's face was deathly pale. Although her power had been blocked by Luin, the instinctive feeling of facing a terrifying creature was still clear to her. Looking at Red Hero, she felt as if she was facing a primordial beast, and her life was no longer in her control. Even when she had sparred with Bayu, she hadn't felt it so deeply. She pretended to be calm and sat down, refusing to look at Red Hero. Red Hero didn't care about Xiang Xiyu at all. She was just an ant, and he only had eyes for Luin. However, Lu Yin's words left him with no choice. He couldn't fight. If he did, he would be breaking the rules, and he might not be able to do anything to Luin. He asked, but Red Hero didn't say anything. He couldn't figure out how Luin had found Northern Hero. Logically speaking, he shouldn't have been able to find him. Red Hero was the only one who knew of Northern Hero's whereabouts, and he was constantly on the lookout. The Red Underworld was so vast that it was impossible to coincidentally find him unless one had a precise location. Luin hadn't seen the entire Red Underworld either. Red Hero couldn't do it with him around. Luin definitely had a way to find Northern Hero. "What are you doing here?" Red Hero asked. Luin stretched. "A change of scenery to open up my mind." "You're cultivating your mind." "You could say that. This is the path of ruthlessness." Luin smiled. "I don't need you to remind me. I know that this is the wrong path of ruthlessness." Red Hero stared at Luin. "If it's wrong, where did your mind come from?" Luin didn't answer. He sat down and poured himself a glass of wine. Red Hero gave him a deep look before leaving. Once Red Hero left, the pressure on Xiang Xiyu disappeared. She gasped for breath, her heart still pounding. That person was Red Hero. Lu Yin grinned. How was it? How did you feel? Xiang Xiyu said in a low voice, I've never felt such a chill. I've heard that Red Hero was the greatest traitor to human civilization. I've thought about getting rid of him if possible, but she didn't say anything more. She was just thinking about it. Lu Yin, on the other hand, was doing it. Thinking and doing were two completely different concepts. She finally understood the kind of pressure Lu Yin and the others were facing. She couldn't even begin to imagine the strength of such an existence. Lu Yin poured her a glass of wine. Don't think too much. He's mine. Just focus on what you're doing. Xiang Xiyu looked at Lu Yin with a different gaze. This person was far more burdened than anyone else could imagine. The boat continued down the river. Lu Yin was curious as to whether Northern Hero would be released again. With this, Red Hero had already set his sights on him. He didn't care as he hadn't intentionally targeted Northern Hero. It was pure luck. However, with Red Hero watching him, how could he encounter Northern Hero again? After thinking about it, he couldn't completely ignore it. Then, the light boat instantly disappeared and randomly appeared in a river of the Red Coat civilization under the star. It restrained its aura. Even with Red Hero's strength, it would take some time for him to find them, who had concealed their auras, unless he could unite with the will of this universe, which was impossible. In a corner of the Red Shirt civilization, Red Hero frowned. Had they teleported away? Had they left, or were they still here? He turned to look at Northern Hero, whose 5 senses had been blocked. If he wanted this person to become the pillar of his path of ruthlessness, he had to let him go out to train. But what if Lu Yin didn't leave? How did he find Northern Hero? You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.